My heart juddered. His arms were locked around his knees and his muscles were on show in the tight t-shirt he wore. Everything about him screamed alpha male, and I couldn't help but appreciate his masculine shape for half a second. Why am I even turned on by Lord Voldemort's hotter younger cousin? I'm an apex predator. My kind aren't built to take orders from anyone. It's written in my DNA to rule over you. I could never bow no matter how powerful you might have the potential to be, he growled. Oh my god, we are in for a wild ride with this book today. I have been exhausted recently and my mental health has been in the toilet, so I figured I needed a lighter and sillier video to make. So I found this thread on Reddit of the worst books people have read based on TikTok recommendations, and one of the names that kept coming up over and over and over was the Zodiac Academy series by twin sisters Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. The first book in this series is called The Awakening, and we are going to do one of our nice deep dive reviews today. I say nice, there's nothing nice about this book. It had a pretty cool looking cover, I will give it that, and it is described as an academy bully romance, which set off all the red flags for me. As someone who was bullied relentlessly up to the age of 16 and had ongoing trauma for years after it, I don't see how the words bully and romance can ever go together in a healthy or enjoyable way. All that said, what really made me want to cover this book was when I read the blurb. The writing style was so atrocious and angsty, I just couldn't help but laugh. I'm a Gemini. Impulsive. Curious. Headstrong. A twin. Heir to a throne I know nothing about, and it turns out I'm Fae. But of course there's a catch. All I have to do to claim my birthright is prove that I'm the most powerful supernatural being in the whole of Solaria. And sure, technically that's true, as I'm the daughter of the Savage King. But the bit they didn't put in the brochure was that every single Fae in this kingdom would claim my throne if they could. So at this point, I guess this was going to be a telling, not showing kind of story, and yes, I was right. But still, fairly interesting premise. I will give it that. The school they've sent me to is both dangerous as and one hell of a party. Vampires bite weaker students in the corridors. The werewolf pack has orgies in the Wailing Wood every full moon. And don't even get me started on the dark and twisted ways the sirens use their power on people's emotions. Or how my sinfully tempting Cardinal magic teacher hosts detentions that leave people needing therapy. Okay, yeah, this book is going to be terrible. My biggest problem is the drool-worthy dragon shapeshifter who has his eyes on my throne. He and his 3 psycho friends are determined to make my time here hell. All I've got to do is survive. But fate might have other ideas. Damn it, why couldn't I have got a letter to Hogwarts? And then, of course, the book gives the warning, this is a dark bully romance. Don't go expecting a sweet school for magic with friends around every corner. Fae fight for everything they own, and Zodiac Academy is a cutthroat school for students aged 18 plus where only the strongest prevail. There's no Dumbledore here to save anyone's bum, and Lionel Acrux will give Voldemort a run for his money in the evil dictator category. So hold on to your Stardust, broomsticks not required, and get ready for a bumpy ride. Oh my god, that is not enough warning for this book. This book is romanticizing abuse, the series. A lot of references to Harry Potter in that blurb as well. Thankfully, there's not as many in the actual books. At least I don't think there are. I don't really know Harry Potter. I'm not that familiar with it. I'm not really a big fan. I read the books once when I was about 22, when my then boyfriend Dan asked me to. I remember very little about them other than I thought they were kind of mediocre. I didn't really get what all this fuss was about. I was like, okay, they're fine, kind of predictable, terrible names for everything, which is a pattern we will see in this book. Oh my god. But no, please don't come at me for not liking Harry Potter. I think there are better young adult and kids books out there. I was always a big Series of Unfortunate Events fan. As an adult, I discovered the Percy Jackson series and basically everything by Rick Riordan, and I feel like even though he writes for kids, it still holds up for adults. Same with Lemony Snicket, Daniel Handler. He writes for kids, but it still holds up so well for adults. They're quality books. Harry Potter, sorry, but no, not my kind of thing. So, based on the blurb alone, my initial thoughts on this book series were, it feels like this is going to be an angsty, awkwardly sexual, how do you do fella kids, let me throw a swear word in here to sound cool, Harry Potter fanfiction. I wasn't far off. I also felt at times while reading this that it was very reminiscent of the House of Night series, which isn't a book series that I've read, but I've edited a few of Elise's videos on it, and I just got very much the same vibes. The only thing I will say is that this seems to be a little bit, not much, but a little bit better written than the House of Night series, but from what I can tell, that's because it's been re-edited in the last year or so, and the version I got seems to be this updated one, because all the original reviews were like, this is full of typos, grammatical errors, it is horrific to read. Now it doesn't seem that bad, there's not so many of them, so I think it may have been re-edited, which, thank God. So, this is Zodiac Academy #1, The Awakening by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. I've never heard of them before, but they're twin sisters, and the main characters are twin sisters who are definitely self-inserts, which is concerning. So I actually thought this book got off to a really good start. On just the first page, there's a really cute little map of the school. I like that. Adorable. 10 points to Zodiac Academy. I thought that was just a Harry Potter reference, but no, it's very fitting for how terrible this book is. I love a book with a map, what can I say? The story starts, and it's told with two alternating perspectives of two twins, Darcy and Tori. Surprisingly normal names. Thank God Colleen Hoover didn't get her hands on this. Sadly, not all the names are quite so normal in this book, but they're not as bad as they could be, so, well, wait till we get to the teachers, they're pretty bad. Chapter 1 opens with criminal activity, so we know Darcy is not like the other girls. She commits crimes. She also doesn't give a damn. Yeah, that's right. She says words like damn, too. Wild. This is the very first line in the book. I was halfway through the window when the police siren sounded. Pause. Breathe. Wriggle hips. The window was a tiny thing with a metal latch digging into my belly, but I was underfed and had the determination of a pit bull. You've met your match, Mr. Window. My sister was way better at this kind of thing, but maybe that was why I was here instead of her. I wanted to prove I could do it, so I was damn well going to. Sirens, closer this time, and whoosh! I was mentally carried away to a jail cell. Then, weeping dramatically on a court stand. Guilty! The jury chimed, then BAM! A metal door slamming in my face while I turned to my cellmate Patrice, who had a gut the size of a beach ball and a menacing gleam in her eyes. Well, at least she's well fed. Oh nice, so a first page where we get harmful stereotypes, terrible sound effects, and body shaming. Lovely. At least we know what to expect nice and early on, and it is not looking good, is it? I braced my hands against the ice-cold tiles and pushed, my hips getting jammed and my butt waving like a flag as I hung out the back of the house. The midnight blue tips of my ebony hair were waving around like a sheet in a storm. Push. Wriggle. Yes. I clambered onto the toilet without grace and jumped down, my beat-up Converses as quiet as air as they hit the tiles. I took a moment to internally celebrate what I'd achieved, rocking my to a silent tune. I did it! I love how she looks like every mid-2000s MySpace girl, right? I say that as someone who, despite being the right age, never had MySpace because I was not cool enough and didn't have enough friends. Never used MySpace. But we all know the type of look, right? We also learn at this point, like I say, that Tori, her twin sister, is the better criminal, so that's fun. That's basically the only thing that distinguishes them. Tori is a better criminal, but Darcy is still a criminal. Tori likes motorbikes. Darcy has not yet mentioned motorbikes. That's it. That's the only difference between them. And I'm up to book 3. A knot frayed and tugged apart in my chest. A floorboard creaked beneath my feet as I moved, and the sound was a thundercrack in my ears. I mean, these descriptions are cliched and angsty and over the top, but at least they're trying, right? You gotta give them credit for that, because they don't do it for the rest of the series. All the effort went into this first chapter and then never again. That said, the first chapters read like a fairly decent piece of GCSE creative writing, you know? I'd give them a C grade. Then we get tragic backstory exposition. Darcy and Tori, it turns out, were in foster care. Oh, terrible, awful. What a life. Their foster carer, Pete, was an alcoholic who didn't care about them and kicked them out the day before they turned 18. This is his house that Darcy is breaking into. Apparently they'd been hustling to save cash as teenagers. It's hidden in this house and they want it back. Fair. Tragic backstory exposition part 2 is cash. A whole wad. We'd been thrown out of Pete's house so hard and fast we hadn't had time to grab it. And it wasn't the type of thing where we could have asked Pete to give us back. Just use a complex sentence. He'd have spent it on one night at the local casino, but we'd been saving for years. While I'd been hustling for money from students at school, buying and selling their unwanted crap for them and taking a profit, Tori had been doing something much more illegal. She never really went into it because she didn't want to implicate me, but I could hazard a guess as to what it was. She always came home at ungodly hours of night smelling of gasoline and adrenaline. I couldn't find it in me to care about the source of our funds. This money was our future. In this precious brick hole was nearly $2,000, enough for 6 months' rent on our apartment, and a sheep it might have been, but it was certainly better than a cold sidewalk. And I'm sorry, but where in the world, or where in America, can I live where rent is $2,000 for 6 months? How cheap! Even when I lived in like a tiny little one-room studio flat that I could have probably touched the walls if I spread my arms, back in 2014, that was still 560 quid a month. That's like, what, $650? Something like that? I don't know. And this book was written in 2021, and their rent is less than half of that madness. I wish I could find even a dump to rent that cheap. Insane. But, this is a fantasy book, so I guess maybe renting is cheap in the fantasy world. Knuckles rapped against the front door. Hard. My gut plummeted. Pete didn't have friends. He was a loner. A loser. Cops imminent. A crash sounded as the cops battered the front door down. No. Heart in throat. I ran like there was a fire up my bum. A door burst open down the hall. Freeze! A male voice shouted. I threw a glance over my shoulder and all I saw was the barrel of a gun. Holy poop! Don't shoot! I crashed into a wall in my panic, my shoulder bruising on impact. Because she's not like the other criminals. She's clumsy. I said freeze, the cop yelled. Desperate, I lurched towards the bathroom, slamming the door shut and shoving the bolt into place. No shots fired yet. That's got to be a good thing. Cops don't shoot unarmed teenage girls, do they? Well, I guess not. When you're white, you can get away with anything. What's odd is that while it took the police officer less than 30 seconds to break down the front door, apparently the bathroom is more of a challenge, and she has time to stand around dunking Pete's toothbrush in the toilet and then shimmy out through the window that she spent nearly 2 pages trying to get through before. This is clearly one strong bathroom door. Maybe Pete should consider using it as his front door instead, because that seems a bit flimsy in comparison. I shoved the cash into the back pocket of my pants, scooped up Pete's toothbrush, and dunked it in the toilet bowl. A thump sounded on the other side of the door, but I was already halfway through the window, and Pete's toothbrush was back in the holder. Totally worth the 5 seconds it had cost me. She then tries to escape under a hole in a fence for reasons, and she loses all her money. The police take it, but then a forbidding male voice filled the air, which cut into me like a knife. Let go of her. The cop released me, and I thanked my lucky stars as I scrambled onto my knees. I turned back, but a pair of large male hands were already wrapping all of our lovely green cash up in a ball. That's our life you're taking! I booted the fence hard, yelling my rage before turning and running as fast and as hard as I could in the opposite direction. Whoever this guy was, he had both saved my ass and ruined my life. Thanks, bumhole. I don't know why I'm alternating between saying the swears and putting my own words in there. I don't know. I should probably bleep them all if I want this video to be seen by people. At this point in my original notes I wrote, is it bad that I kind of don't care? Also, what I really want to know is, and this is maybe one of the biggest plot holes in the book, how did the police know she was breaking in? Who called them? And in what world would police actually respond to a crime in progress in a timely manner? I know this is meant to be a fantasy book, but that just crosses the realm of unbelievable, unrealistic, never gonna happen. Then we move on to some nice melodrama. I trudged up the 4 floors to our apartment, caked in mud, and furious as hell with myself. My hands were jammed in my pockets and I was soaked through from the downpour I just experienced for 10 blocks. Chicago was having mood swings. If it wasn't the wind, it was the rain. It was September, damn it! They were still sunbathing in Springfield. I shivered as the cold trickled into my bones and made every single part of me numb, apart from the pain of losing that cash and the shame that I'd failed us so deeply. I got your scalp. I shed my leather jacket with a dramatic huff, and yes, just like that, Kubi. She's doing sound effects. And she clenched... I love you so much. And she glanced up, arching a brow. Her face transformed as she pulled herself out of technology brain and sprang to her feet. "Where have you been?" she asked, confusion gleaming from her olive green eyes, which were the exact same shade as mine. Like everything about us, bronze skin, our lips full and wide. We were a mirror version of each other, except for my dark hair's blue tips. Maybe that was why we drove each other crazy sometimes. Darcy then lets us know that she's a bad girl, but only in the kind of way that JoJo C was a bad girl. As she said, "I had to figure this out because we were so effing screwed if we didn't." That wasn't me censoring that time. And I am fully aware of the irony of me making this joke as someone who rarely swears unless I'm quoting someone. That irony is not lost on me, is it, Cooper Pie? No. And come say hi. You can see at my knee. Yeah. Tori and Darcy then try to figure out how to pay their rent now, and Tori says it's okay because she's gonna commit more crimes. I'm not sure why neither has the idea to just, I don't know, and this is a crazy suggestion, get a job, but here we are. Chapter 2 is Tori's chapter, and one thing you'll notice about Tori is that she has the exact same voice as Darcy. Sometimes, especially in the later chapters of this book as well, but all the books, I somehow, I get them mixed up. I have to go back and be like, wait, which twin is speaking here? Because I don't know. They just sound exactly the same. And this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. If you're going to have a story told from multiple first-person perspectives, I want them to each have their own unique and recognisable voices. Colleen Hoover is also terrible for doing this, writing in first person but making all of her characters sound the same. As a contrast, look at a book like Taylor Jenkins Reid's book, Daisy Jones and the Six. I love that book. I know some people find it a bit cheesy. I still need to watch the TV series. But in general, I love that book. I love everything about it. So the book tells the story of this band from the 70s, like recounting everything that happened. By compiling snippets of interviews with different people, and it's really fun because you get multiple perspectives of the same events, but also each character has this really fun and unique and recognisable voice. They don't all just sound the same. You can tell that they're very different characters with different personalities and different ways of speaking. I love that so much. Some speak in these long, slow, complex sentences. Some just give short, snappy 1 or 2 word answers. Some are like excited and enthusiastic. Some people you can tell they're reluctant to talk, especially about certain stuff, but each voice is completely distinct, and I love that. That is what these books are missing. Even in the later books, we find that we get chapters from other characters' perspectives. They still all sound the same. Tori and Darcy could absolutely be the same person, except the authors needed them to be in 2 places at once and have multiple love interests. Anyway, this chapter opens with Tori stealing a motorbike and almost being caught by car park security. She says, "I kicked the bike into gear and released the throttle before he could finish that thought. I shot forward, leaning low as I guided the superbike down the steep, spiralling ramp as quickly as humanly possible. If anyone was coming the other way, then I was dead. Splat, gone, bye-bye Tori. But not today." Yeah, she's not like the other girls either. She puts people's lives in danger. Sorry, but there's nothing cute or quirky or funny about dangerous driving that endangers innocent people's lives. There's just not. She then brags about breaking speed limits, driving on pavements, running red lights, and nearly crashing, so she literally proves my point even more. This isn't funny, this isn't exciting, this is just really, really stupid. Then this 18-year-old goes to sell her stolen motorbike to a guy named Joey, and we learn that most men in this world are complete creeps. This is a pattern you'll see over and over, and also every man in the world is attracted to these twins. Every single one, except maybe Diego later, but we'll see what happens in other books, I guess. Anyway, this guy Joey, he was a tall man, his dark hair slicked back with gel, and his leather jacket stamped with the insignia of his bike gang. Not that I had any interest in that. He was in his late 30s, not old enough to have stopped him from trying his luck with me in the past, but too old for me to be interested. I was 18. He'd been my age when I was born. Gross. Yeah, that is gross. And it's even more gross that it sounds like he's been hitting on you while you were still an underage teenager. Just stop it. Why do men have to be creeps? Can we not even have one book where adults don't creep on children, please? Anyway, Tori gets paid for her stolen bike, but not as much as she'd like, and immediately gets changed from her criminal disguise to, oh my god, I'm such a total hottie. I was going to say outfit, but maybe more of a costume. but it like totally shows off how hot she is so she can go drinking in a bar that is like in front of Joey's criminal stuff building. Whatever. I kicked the baggy jeans off next. Beneath them, I was wearing a pair of skin-tight yoga pants, and my black boots came up to my knee. The red vest I coupled with it was just dressy enough to pass for something I'd wear clubbing, especially as I tugged it lower to make my cleavage more prominent. I yanked the clips from my hair last, letting my black locks tumble to my waist as I ran my hands through it. No one would recognize me now. The man who'd stolen that bike was long gone, and I was just one of many girls out enjoying a drink tonight. So then she goes on to tell us that she's not like the other 18-year-olds because she drinks free tequila, when all of a sudden she is stopped by a man with muscles, as all men in these types of books do. Why are all the men in these books like big and muscly and wide, and they have these broad shoulders and come on, give me some real men, please. You know, where are the cute skinny guys like the ones that I like? Where are the short guys with cute little dad bods? What about the guy who's got a little mustache and a cute little belly going on? Give me some of them as like hot love interests, please. I turned to leave and found my way blocked by a wall of muscular chest wrapped in a crisp white shirt. "Can I have a word with you?" he asked as I glanced up at him. He was tall, his brown hair pushed back in the kind of careless, I've spent ages making this look accidental way that guys with too much time and money on their hands often went for. I guessed he was 5 or 6 years older than me, probably mid-20s. Kinda hot in a straight-laced way, which wasn't really my bag. "Are you lost?" I asked with a smirk. This was a biker bar. Facial hair, leather jackets and jeans were pretty much the uniform here. A Mr. Expensive shirt and grey slacks stood out like a sore thumb. He did have a beard, but it was carefully styled to look a certain way. The beards in here were more along the lines of crumb-hoarding faceworks than designer stubble. He was drawing attention, and the last thing I needed right now was any extra attention. And like a walking red flag, he immediately restrains her when she tries to walk away from him, because I guess women having boundaries and, you know, not wanting their body controlled by men doesn't matter if the guy restraining them is hot. "Good for you, I'll see you around." I started to walk away from him, but he caught my arm. What the hell do you think you... "Take a seat with me," he said, his tone firm. I dropped into a chair by the bar, and he sat down beside me, releasing my arm. Fancy Shirt snatched my arm again and said something which was drowned out in the crowd of voices and background music. "Back the F off," I snapped, twisting my arm out of his grip as I slid into the throng of bodies. A few of Joey's gang overheard me and stepped in to halt Mr. Expensive's advance as he tried to follow me. I took my chance to escape and headed for the exit. Must be the full moon, bringing out the pushy weirdos again. She gets a lift home from some guy named Matt, who insists on taking her out to dinner and getting her number because, again, you can't be a woman in this book without every man being attracted to you. It's okay, it doesn't matter. This Matt is completely forgotten about and never mentioned again. It's unnecessary. He's only there to show us that, oh my god, Tori is like so completely hot and every guy wants her. Sadly, as Tori gets home, she finds that Muscles from the bar has followed her. Creepy as hell. "We didn't finish our chat." A deep voice came from behind me, and I flinched in surprise as I turned back to the street. There, standing beneath the flickering streetlight, was none other than Mr. Expensive himself. Terror coursed down my spine and sent my heart into overdrive. I didn't waste time on chit-chat with the stalker as I turned and bolted for the stairs, my heart thundering in my chest. Yeah, that is literally stalking. Call the police. They were quick enough to try and arrest your sister earlier when there was a crime in progress. Apparently in this fantasy world they actually do stuff, so give them a ring, they can probably help. I could hear his footsteps behind me and my mind filled with images of my broken body abandoned in a dumpster, food for the rats, and a one-liner in the newspaper tomorrow. Holy effing poop on a cornflake. "Stop," he called, and for some unknown, utterly terrifying reason, I did. This would be more tense without the cornflake line, I'll be honest. "I'm Professor Orion, and I'm not going to hurt you, and you're not going to scream. You want to let me in." He released his grip on me and stepped back as I stared up at him, fear still strangling me, but the desire to scream for help gone. I opened my mouth to tell him I absolutely didn't want to let a random stranger into our apartment at midnight on a Sunday, but my hands seemed to have other ideas. I shoved my key in the lock and turned it before I could stop myself. "Come in," I said sweetly. What the hell? I wasn't sweet, especially with strangers. Especially with stalker strangers. Yeah, I'd hope not. Fancy Shirt stepped right into my personal space, offering me a flat smile as he followed me inside and pushed the door closed behind me. My heart was pounding, my palms slick, and I was filled with the feeling that I just let a fox into my chicken coop. So, yeah, this is clearly mind control, and in my original notes I wrote here, if this man doesn't end up being a complete villain, there's something wrong with this book. And I can tell you now there is something so wrong with this book. A good man, a man who ends up being a love interest, doesn't stalk women, use mind control, and invade their personal space if he's a good guy. Next chapter cuts back to Darcy, and here we hear more about muscles as muscles because apparently it's his only defining feature. Darcy thinks that Tori brought him home to sleep with, and she says, I clung to the edge of the couch as the man sidestepped Tori, taken in our small apartment with a single sweeping look. Heat invaded every cell in my body as his eyes fell on me, coal-like and dark as sin. He looked like a quarterback squeezed into a nice shirt and grey pants. Oh. His sleeves were rolled up to reveal muscular forearms, and that trend continued from his biceps to his battering ram shoulders. A short beard clung to his chin, but he had an air of youth about him, which suggested he was only a few years older than Tori and I. That could only mean one thing. Hell no! I stood up, pointing at the couch, which converted into the only bed in our apartment. Go to his place, Tor. Are you crazy? Are you really expecting me to clear out so you can defile our only bed? Ridiculous. God's sake. I realised Mr. Shoulders... I can't. I realised Mr. Shoulders was staring at my pyjamas with an expression that said he was wholly amused. What are you staring at? I demanded, but heat slammed into my cheeks beneath my defensive facade? We've had this conversation before. I think it's facade, right? I don't know. I thought I was coming here to collect a couple of 18-year-olds, but I must have got the wrong apartment, little bunny. He laughed at his own joke and I cocked my head, fury bubbling up inside me. Bunny? I glanced down at the bright-eyed rabbits lining my PJs and planted my hands on my hips. My mouth dried up. Damn, why did I pick these today of all days? Screw everything about this guy and his negging. He is every red flag walking around in a muscled bundle. It turns out that he was one of the ones who was chasing Darcy earlier, and he's the one who scooped up her money and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I've been chasing you two all day, because that's not creepy as hell. Couldn't he have just, knocked on their front door and been like, hey, can we have a chat? Or, I don't know, sent an email or something. He continues to be creepy but hot. No, sorry, we just call this creepy. A man who behaves like this will never be hot, no matter how he looks. You know, you don't get to stalk women, invade their personal space, control them, all of that, and still be called hot at the end of the day. Nothing about that behavior is hot. His eyes swung to me and seemed to suck everything in like a black hole. My heart accelerated and I started to deeply fear having this stranger in our home. Yeah, you don't say. You're going to listen to me and remain calm and collected, he said in a powerful tone, and I felt an instant desire to obey. I nodded easily, half aware that I didn't want to listen to this random guy, but doing it anyway. I dropped down beside Tori on the coffee table, and we both gave him our full attention. He beamed at us, and there was that dimple again. Just the one, denting his masterpiece of a face, and somehow making him even damn hotter. I hate this book. Anyway, he's like, let me explain everything to you with another exposition dump, and this happens a lot in these books, so get used to it. I'm not a beat around the bush kind of guy, so here it is. You're not human, you're Fae, which means you have an unawakened power in you defined by the stars themselves. You belong in Solaria, a mirror world of Earth where Fae rule. Are we keeping up? A flash of dry amusement swept over his face, and though I couldn't find it in me to be angry, I was certainly frustrated. I wanted to scream at him that he was crazy and he needed to leave, or I was going to call the cops, but I couldn't get past the floating calm taking hold of my body. I shared a look with Tori, her nose crinkling, as she gave me he's batshit crazy expression. You're both Gemini, he stated. Hot-headed, hence the coercion I've used on you to keep this all running smoothly. Especially as we're running late, he muttered, lifting his wrist to check his watch. Dials and silver cogs spun wildly on the strange thing. It was unlike any watch I'd ever seen. And then there's this moment. Wait a minute. I stood too, but it did a little to compete with his towering height. You said we're Fae? What does that even mean? We're a different race. A better one, he shrugged, and I scowled. Careful, Miss Vega. Expressions like that are punishable in my classroom. Vega? My nose wrinkled. That's not my name. Wait, please tell me you got the wrong twins. He shook his head. That is your true surname in Solaria. No one will call you anything else once you get there. Mark my words. And actually it's funny because they don't, and we just kind of accept that that's their surname. And we never actually find out what their Earth regular surnames were. Very weird. In my original notes, I wrote, please tell me that this isn't some creepy Colleen Hoover slammed type teacher abusing his position of power to bully students so they end up sleeping with him thing. Please don't let it be that. If this man becomes a love interest, I will buy a copy of this book, secondhand, just so I can burn it. I'm going to be burning this book. They refused to go with him at first because, sensible. The professor gave her a predator's smile that made my stomach knot. This is the worst. He is the worst. He then goes on to tell them that they're changelings, that their parents aren't really their parents, or at least their Earth parents weren't really their parents, blah, blah, blah. Their Earth parents are people who died when they were babies anyway, so it's like a whole, like, kind of what do they matter to this plot? They don't. Their real parents apparently were the wealthiest family in Solaria. How convenient. He then tells them that the parents that raised them for several years until they died don't matter because they aren't your blood, and blood's all that matters in my opinion, which is ridiculously offensive to anyone who's ever been adopted or who has adopted kids. It's completely untrue, but you'll find there's this theme throughout all of these books of like purity and blood relations mattering more than anything else, and a lot of racism, you know, you'll see. Anyway, the catch is to inherit all of this money and blah, 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 they have to go and graduate from the Zodiac school or Zodiac Academy first, because of course they do. He says of magic, yes, water, air, fire, earth, you will possess one element, perhaps two. Your parents were very powerful, so I expect you will be immeasurably gifted. Something about his tone told me he wasn't happy about that. I wrote in my notes originally, what we bet in they're so special they have access to all of the elements. If not each, then at least between them. I was right, this book is incredibly predictable. He then, without asking, blows stardust in their face so they can travel. This just feels like drugging a kidnap, right? After being kidnapped, they have to get in a ring with a tall woman. He says, welcome to Zodiac Academy. I'm Professor Zenith of the Astrology Department, and it is my greatest pleasure to awaken your elements this very night. Please lift your faces to the sky, students. It's time for the stars to rouse your inner power. Her tone was slow and dramatic. Even though this whole thing sounded ludicrous, I couldn't help but hang on her every word. She pushed the hood back from her head, and midnight locks tumbled down around her. She was middle-aged, her skin pale and glimmering, and her lips painted in dark red lipstick. Her eyes fell on Tori and I, and she jerked her finger towards the sky in an order. I realised everyone in the circle had looked up, and we promptly followed suit. I wonder why it doesn't mention if she had muscles or not. Come on, I'm waiting for a 3-paragraph description of this woman's arms, please. The book wouldn't be complete without it. They find out immediately that they can feel water magic, which means they have the element of water inside them, and then, oh my god, they have the power of wind too. Who'd have thought? Would... Eyes fell on us, and a few words were exchanged, which I didn't catch. Zenith faced us, her brows lifting with delight. You are of air and water, girls. Your powers will be great indeed, just like your parents. And then, what? Oh my god, they have earth powers too. So rare, so special. Who would have seen this coming? I shrugged, confused as I spotted the other pupils in the circle who also had the grass hugging in around them. It took me a moment to realise everyone was staring at us, Zenith included. Oh, my! She breathed, clapping her hand to her mouth. When she dropped it, she was smiling widely. My dears, how wonderful! You have earth as well. 3 elements is very rarely heard of. You will be amongst the most powerful students at Zodiac. A lump formed in my throat as the news settled over me. I suppose that was a good thing, but it all felt too surreal to really hit home. The other students were muttering, and I caught strange words like celestial airs and Vega twin. Finally, they get checked for the element of fire, and come on, what are the chances they'll have firepower too? Impossible, right? But oh my god, they do! What? Wild! All 4 elements? Who would have predicted this? Definitely not me 30 seconds ago. Everyone was staring. Hard. And not in a good way. Nearly a quarter of the circle had the same rings around their feet too, but no one seemed to care about them. You hold every element? Zenith gasped, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe it were true. is that? Bad? I asked. Seems like it, Tori whispered, so only I could hear. Zenith recomposed herself, clearing her throat while mutters broke out around us, loud and unavoidable. Of course not, Zenith finally answered me. And then what could have been an interesting moment and like a point of actual plot development is absolutely ruined by this ridiculous exchange, which could be something like which could easily be something out of the House of Night series. It is, looks like my boyfriend has competition. I don't know why she's doing that accent, but apparently she is now. One girl said, throwing a sharp glare in our direction. Her hair was a rich gold colour and perfectly straight. Her face, the kind of pretty you usually found in a makeup commercial. The girl beside her narrowed her eyes. Are you really dating one of the heirs, Kylie? Yeah, we've been together since forever. He texts me like every other week. Kylie tossed her hair over her shoulder with an expression that said that was something to be proud of. I, again, wrote in my original notes, whoever this boyfriend guy is definitely going to become a love interest for one of the twins. This Kylie will become an enemy, and then they'll all make up and fight evil together by book 7, probably. And yeah, you heard that right, book 7. There are currently 9 books in this series, and I think something like 7 spin-offs, if that makes sense. Novellas, prequels, retelling from the guy's perspective. Oh my god. And they've all been written since 2021. That's 3 years. 16 books in 3 years. You can tell why the quality is in the bin. They're then told because they have all of the powers, they need to pick which element house they want to live in, and they're not allowed to pick the same one. They have to be separated because plot convenience, I guess. Okay, end of chapter, start of Tori's chapter. She says, the awakening had left me reeling, trapped within my own body as I tried to adjust to the sudden onslaught of power, which had filled a void I'd never known I had. For the first time in my life, I was struck speechless. This power had crept upon me, whispered sweet nothings in my ear, then slapped my face so hard it was left pink and stinging for the whole world to see. And you know what? This might actually be an interesting topic to explore in these books. This idea of power actually making you feel trapped in your own body. I think that would be so interesting to actually take a look at, and it's just never developed or explored or really mentioned again, and I think that's such a shame. Missed potential. Anyway, they meet a girl/woman called Sophia who seems nice. I'm so conflicted what to call these characters because they're all 18-ish, right? They are technically adults, so I should be calling them women. But they're in a school being treated like children. They act like children. They talk like children. So I want to call them girls. Like, the equivalent would be they're a bunch of freshers at uni. But, well, it's been a good 13 years since I was a fresher. I don't remember any of us acting or being treated in this way, like, so juvenile. It's very, very odd. It's like the authors wanted to write about a bunch of teenagers having sex without any backlash, and teenagers having sex with their teachers without any backlash. Even if they're adults, that's still an abuse of power and it's wrong. But I hate these books. Anyway, this Sophia, she seems very nice. She is one of the few characters in this... There are 2 characters in this book who are genuinely nice. Sophia and Diego. They are the only nice people in these books. And Sophia, at this point, is basically just a walking exposition dump. She's also brand new to the school. She's never been there before, but somehow she knows everything about it. Anything we need to know about the school, the buildings, the classes, she tells us because the plot requires it. She never explains how she knows. She's a new student too, like I say, but it's convenient for the plot, so let's let her dump on us, I guess. And of course, this is the point where we need to introduce some hot men into the mix too. And remember, they're mostly just hot at this point because they ignore people, look down on them, and have muscles, which is apparently all women find attractive. Maybe I'm just not a woman if this doesn't do it for me, but here we are. Again, where's my kind men? Where are my quiet, nerdy guys who take a genuine interest in people? Where are my enthusiastic info dumpers who want to tell me everything they know about caterpillars? Like, give me that kind of man, please. That's attractive. Basically, my question is, where is anyone with a remotely unique personality? But anyway, here we go, let's meet the guys. 4 of them are sat on a red settee in the middle of, like, the common room, so apparently that makes them special and different to everyone. On the left was a guy with skin as dark as coffee, his black hair shaved into a mohawk, which should have made him look like a total douchebag, yet somehow made me want to run my fingers all over it instead. I think we all know that douchebag vibe that some guys have, right? But am I the only one who finds that an immediate and permanent turn off? Because no. You can be physically beautiful, but if you have that douchebag vibe, and you probably are one, nope. Surely I'm not alone in that, right? The guy sat next to him. Who's talking at this point? Tori's talking at this point. My heart raced a little like I was a kid caught taking candy as his dark blue eyes trailed over me. He pushed a hand through his curling golden hair, drawing my gaze to his broad shoulders for a moment before I looked away without studying the other two so closely. Stop it. The principal turns up and is creepy with them as she's like... Her gaze roamed over my sister and I, hungrily as she drank in every detail on display, and I found myself wishing I'd opted to change out of the low-cut red vest. Why are all the adults, especially ones in position of power in this book, immediately creepy? Can you just stop it? Anyway, she tells them, again, a little bit of a exposition dump, your parents were the last king and queen of Solaria. You return here as joint heirs to the throne. Which is why you've caused quite a stir. Since the demise of your mother and father, the four celestial families have held power of the throne between them equally. They'd intended to keep hold of that power with their own heirs in the knowledge that the royal line had fallen. But with your return, everything could be about to change once more. It turns out the four guys on the settee are the heirs. They are set to rule this kingdom, or they were, until these two twins showed up. Tori goes back to staring at the boys, because of course she does. The guy on the right tilted his head to the side, his long chestnut hair tipping over his fist as he leant his chin against his knuckles. There was something deeply animal in the way he eyed us, and I found myself lifting my chin, refusing to cower beneath the challenge in his earthly brown eyes. And in my notes here, I was like, oh, what, you betting he's a werewolf? You don't make a brunette man in these kinds of books with something deeply animal about him without him being a werewolf. And I said, if he's not a werewolf, I will eat the laptop I'm currently reading this book on. And my laptop is still very much uneaten. Just say that. And then there's the fourth guy. And again, in my notes, the first time I read this, I said, what we bet in each of these guys lives in one of the element houses too. And then the fourth guy, I glanced back at the couch dominated by the four heartbreakers as the final guy leaned forward to get a better look at us. Stop it. He rested his elbows on his knees, his dark eyes crawling over my flesh in a way that made heat rise along my spine. He was broader than the others, his muscles tight beneath a maroon t-shirt which clung to the curves of his powerful frame. His hair was jet black and just long enough to shadow his eyes as it spilled over his forehead. Ink lined his bicep. What does that even mean? Ink lined his... Oh, tattoo. I mean tattoo. I'm an idiot. Ink lined his biceps, disappearing beneath the short sleeves of his t-shirt. The design's intricate yet powerful in a way I couldn't quite name. His face was cut from my very own personal fantasy, as if someone had delved into my deepest desires and drawn them into strong angles and perfect temptation made just for me. I can't take this seriously. My gaze caught on his muscular body, his mouth and the stubble gracing his jaw. His mouth again. My heart raced a little faster as his eyes met mine for a moment, and I felt like a lamb caught in the gaze of a lion. He was dangerous in all the right ways, and I knew without a doubt that the fire in his eyes would burn me up if I strayed too close. And I was like, oh, he's the fire guy. There you go. Anyway, the girls are actually finally properly introduced to them, and we get some stupid names. This is where stupid names come in. Gentlemen, Principal Nova purred as she... God's sake. Gentlemen, Principal Nova purred as she gave me a little shove so that I was forced to stand before them like a sacrificial offering. These are the celestial heirs, she explained to me and Darcy, naming them from left to right. Max Rigel, the dark-skinned demigod. Caleb Altair, the blonde-haired beau next door. Darius Acrux, my sin-filled fantasy. And Seth Capella, the long-haired Lothario. This is Gwendolina and Roxania Vega. Those aren't our names, I interrupted, refusing to keep standing there like a lemon while the pack of muscle-filled daydreams assessed us like we were fresh meat. I'm Tori, and that's Darcy. I'm aware your changeling family gave you names of their birth children, but now you're home, you don't have to keep using. I like my name, Darcy interjected, and I'm sure as poop not going to start going by Roxania. I agreed in a tone that closed the subject for further discussion. So we've learnt the girls' real names, but they're sticking with their chosen names instead, so that's nice. And this is a thing that keeps coming up quite a lot, and I do actually appreciate the way so far, I'm only partway through book 3, but so far the book seems to at least respect that they want to keep their chosen names, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. The bad guys don't respect it, but at least the books in general seem to, so that's a slight win on their part. I'll give them that. So like I say, it turns out that these 4 guys are the celestial heirs. These are the ones that would be holding the throne together as a little 4 group if our twins hadn't returned, or if the twins don't make it through studying at this school. Again, in my original notes, I said clearly they're setting them up to be the bad guys who probably end up falling for the girls or trying to make the girls fall for them so they can take their power. Whatever, kind of predictable. The 4 guys looked at us like offering the hand of friendship was the last thing on their minds. In fact, I got the distinct feeling that Dark and Dangerous might be trying to set us on fire with his eyes alone. To my surprise, he was the one to speak first, a smile lighting his face which was no doubt meant to look friendly, but seemed like a mask to me. Yeah, he's the firepower guy, clearly. Can you feel that power? Caleb asked, leaning towards us as if he intended to sniff us like a dog. Wow, so sexy. I just love my hot muscly men to sniff me like a dog. For God's sake. I said in this, if we've got the werewolf in long-haired guy, I reckon one of them has to be a vampire too. And if this guy is blonde and sniffing them, then my vote is for him. I'm a genius. Just saying. I could have written these books. I already know everything that's going to happen. I guess all these things. I am a genius. That's all I can say. Before we could get 2 steps, I came face to face with a broad chest. As the 4 heirs suddenly rose to stand around us. Again, they all have the same body type. Give me a real man, please. That was a little rude, Seth murmured, his voice almost like an animal growl as he looked down at me, his long hair spilling over his shoulders. Definitely the werewolf. Cut them some slack, Seth, Darius said as he stepped closer too, and we found ourselves boxed in by a wall of testosterone-fueled muscle. I didn't much like being forced into a corner like that. Yeah, that is horrifying. I think that's most women's worst nightmare. They don't know how it works here yet. I'm guessing you didn't realise that turning your back on your superiors is considered an insult. His tone was almost kind, but his words sent a trickle of F you right along my spine, and I straightened as I turned my gaze on him instead. He was even more intimidating now that he was upright, his broad chest in line with my face, so I was forced to tilt my head to look up at him. Yeah, these guys are trash. They just are. This isn't hot or attractive. This behaviour is intimidating, and it should be condemned. If you don't want me to hate these characters to their core, you are going to need to condemn this behaviour that they're doing now and entirely redeem it. And that is something that this book does not do. It excuses it, it makes it out to be okay, it keeps repeatedly happening, and yet the authors still want us to believe that these men are hot and attractive and should be love interests. Sorry, but threatening women is not hot. Then we get a full-on attack with a little threat of sexual violence too. Lovely. And honestly, this is tame compared to what they go on to do. A solid weight slammed into my side and I released a cry of surprise as I was propelled around and shoved up against the golden wall of the curving room. My heart leapt with fear as I tried to break loose of my attacker's grip, and Caleb smiled at me as he pressed his strong body against mine, pinning me in place. "Wanna beg for forgiveness?" he purred, and a shiver raced down my spine as my sister yelled at him to stop and tried to come to my aid. Max grabbed her before she got close, and my gaze slid around the room, hunting out the teachers, but none of them seemed to care about what the heirs were doing to us. My heart was pounding, and I struggled feebly against Caleb's hold on my wrist before trying to slam my knee into his crotch. He avoided my attack easily, pressing his body to mine so that I couldn't repeat it. "Last chance," he offered, his gaze sliding over me in a way that sent fear crawling through my limbs despite his devastatingly good looks. "F you," I growled, my fists clenched with the desire to punch his pretty face. "I hoped you'd say that," His mouth dipped to my neck, and for half a second I thought he was going to kiss me before the sting of his teeth pierced my flesh. I cried out, bucking against him in disbelief, as the most horrifying sucking sensation pulled at my blood, and worse than that, my newfound power. I could feel him draining it, drawing it out of me and into itself. So there it is. He's a vampire. And I would say that this kind of concept of a vampire feeding off you without your consent is essentially an analogy for sexual violence. This is essentially like him raping her. And this repeatedly happens throughout the book, and they still want us to find him attractive. Anyway, no one in this entire room full of hundreds of people helps, because that would make them decent people, and apparently there aren't any in this book. My gaze fell on Sophia, who looked like she wished she could intervene. Orion seemed mildly bored, and the principal, who appeared disappointed, and finally the other three heirs. Max held my sister back as easily as if she were a child, despite the fact she was thrashing and cursing at him. Darius and Seth moved to stand beside him as they watched the show with amused expressions. They watched their friend feed on me with a sickening sense of satisfaction rolling from them. Darius caught my eye, and for a moment I felt like I was looking at a monster instead of a man. Yeah, this is basically everyone just standing back and watching a rape happen. That's it. Anyway, Darcy's like, ooh, I'm so mad. Whoops, accidental magic. Oh, what? Who knew I was this powerful? And she manages to free herself. And the men are like, boo-hoo, you hurt our egos. And then all the other students are like, the group of our apparent supporters closed in, headed by the dark-haired girl who was built like a Viking warrior. She says, we'll fight for our queens, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So there is a group who support them and come in to help them, but only after they've displayed their power. Whatever. We'll learn more about them later, don't worry. Anyway, the principal's like, multiple element freshmen. Freshmen. It's time to choose your houses. Principal Nova called, stepping away from a few members of the faculty who she'd been deep in conversation with. So deep that she hadn't noticed one of her students biting Tori. It's switched to Darcy's chapter now. Here we go. I don't think so, but what kind of school let their students attack each other without so much as a verbal warning? Maybe the kind of school that needs to be lax for the sake of plot, I guess. So these four guys, it turns out, are house captains. Can we just not? Like, I never went to a school with, like, houses or anything like that. I think they might have changed after I left, but not while I was there. So maybe I don't get it. But this is a book where you apparently have actual royalty and, like, future politicians with magical powers, and you have these big political struggles going on in the world, and we find out later there's like a string of serial murders happening. There's serious stuff going on, and you want me to care about house captains and house points and all of that nonsense. It's ridiculous. I just can't. Max stepped forward first, brushing a hand over his mohawk with a smirk, and his bicep hardened. He was a tower of pure masculinity, and those eyes held nothing but a sea storm. He looked at Nova, but somehow I sensed his words were for us. Water, focus, house, aqua. My house is for those who have what it takes to face the deadly sea of life in Zodiac without flinching. Thank you for that poetic description, Nova said, clearing her throat as she pointed to the bitey blonde guy, Caleb. My heart pounded harder as at his angelic face, which hid a demon beneath it. I can't speak. Earth focus, house terror, and terror is exactly what you'll get if you don't fit in. God's sake, they're so cringy. He gazed firmly at Tori, and my gut shriveled into a tight ball. So the guy who I thought was Earth and a werewolf ends up actually being Seth, the air guy, so I was wrong about that, but, you know, he's air, not Earth, but there you go, that's fun, I guess. The long-haired guy stood forward next, and my gaze scraped over his muscular frame. Everything about him was tempting and distinctly predatory. I don't think tempting and predatory ever go together. Air focus, house air. Life with us is a breeze. His eyes swept our way and he smiled. It looked pretty genuine and my shoulders relaxed a little. Yep, he looked like the one, especially as the last one, Darius, was built like a fortress and had eyes as sharp as knives. Fire focus, House Ignis. We aren't for the fate of heart, and frankly, I don't see anyone in this lineup who's good enough to join us. He glared at us as if daring us to join his house, and I could almost see him thinking up ways to make our lives insufferable if we did. So yeah, fire guy is the fire guy. what a surprise. This whole section with meeting the guys and stuff was so poorly written and went on for pages and pages and pages that I actually had trouble remembering who was who and what descriptions were meant to be for what people. It was a mess. So if you haven't got it, here's a little summary. Max has a mohawk, dark skin, muscles, and is the head of the water house. Caleb is blonde, blue eyes, muscles, bitey bite because he's a vampire, and is head of the earth house. Seth has long brown hair, animal-like, we find out later he's a werewolf. Muscles, head of the air house, hard to say, and he's dating the annoying girl Kylie from earlier. And Darius has black hair, muscles, Tori has a crush on him, and he's head of the firehouse. Okay, got that. Darcy and Tori, like I say, are meant to choose different houses from each other because plot or something. Darcy chooses air because Seth seems like the least scary and violent man, which is ironic after book 2. And Tori chooses fire because, again, plot, I guess. Air, I said, trying to keep my spirits up as I walked cautiously towards Seth. He moved forward to meet me and suddenly wrapped me in his arms. The exact arms I'd just been having a 2-second daydream about. Damn, it felt like eating a too hot cookie fresh out of the oven. It burned all the way down but tasted divine. Welcome to the tribe, babe. Stop it. He smelled like musk and something almost animal. I tried to pull away as he held me in what was fast becoming an inappropriately close embrace for several more seconds. When he released me, his girlfriend drew closer with a bright smile on her face. Hey girl, just so you know, my bae is in charge, so as long as you get that, we're totally cool. Still don't know why I'm doing that voice for her, I'm so sorry. Please stop all of this. So Seth, the werewolf guy, immediately starts to be incredibly inappropriate and push physical boundaries in the form of an initiation, which is not okay, is it? Now, Seth smiled, and for a moment he looked like a hungry wolf who hadn't eaten for a few days. They weren't subtle with these hints, were they? Let's get on with it. His eyes whipped to me, and he curled a finger to beckon me over. My mouth dried up, and it took a second for me to make my legs move as I stepped forward. He turned to face the group of freshmen, slinging an arm around my shoulders. His fingers stroked my bare skin, and I stiffened in surprise at his tactile behaviour. I tried to duck away, but he plucked the back of my shirt and tugged me against his hip again, his hand suddenly in my hair. Was he petting me? In my notes at the time, I was like, this is not okay. But honestly, this is mild compared to what he goes on to do later, so bear that in mind. Seth kept his attention on me, and my heart crashed against my ribcage as he moved his nose to my hair and inhaled deeply. It's creepy as hell. A shudder ran through me and I tried to push him back, but he was frighteningly strong. The hot, wet pad of his tongue suddenly dragged up my right cheek, and revulsion slammed into me. Ugh, I know, baby, I know. It's only cute when you do that. I brought a hand up to slap him, but he caught it with ease, his eyes glittering as if we were playing some game. He laughed heartily. Chill out, babe. This is how I say hello. Babe should not chill out. Babe should run away right now. Shouldn't she, Angel? What's your order, babe? Seth nuzzled into my ear, and my body seized up at the intimacy of his gestures. What? You know, siren, vampire, werewolf, he asked with a note of curiosity. Anyway, like a red pill douchebag, Seth starts getting people to reply to everything he says with, yes, alpha. And I cannot take this seriously. This is ridiculous. You will reply with, yes, alpha. Let's try that again, Seth commanded. Have you got that? Yes, alpha, the freshman called, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It was too degrading. Right? I was suddenly yanked against a hard body, and I felt sure it was Seth. Answer me, pledge. Gugh. Yes, alpha, I forced out through my teeth. He released me, and I stumbled forward as he stepped away. Ridiculous. He then blindfolds everyone and takes them up to the top of a big tower, and he gets them to jump off, so they have to harness the power of air. Ugh. Except, oh look, what a surprise, it wasn't a real jump, and he just made them jump off a step, and it wasn't actually everyone, it was just a prank on Darcy. Ha ha ha, so funny and not at all juvenile bullying. That's not funny, I blew out, trying to smile it off. He caught my wrist, dragging me forward, his eyes everywhere again. The sizzling look in his gaze made my smile drop away like a falling brick. What's not funny is you and your sister showing up here to steal our throne. We've worked our bums off to earn that right. Our 4 families have ruled for nearly 20 years since the fall of King Vega, and Solaria has been much better off for it. Our parents divide the power between themselves, and as sons of the Celestial Council, we will soon take that responsibility from them. We don't intend to just sit back and let you take the throne from us and return Solaria to the crap heap it was when your father ruled. He snarled, his eyes 2 hollow pits of cruelty. There was no friendliness left. His touches weren't curious now, they were possessive and degrading. I don't like all this grabby and pulling people around and touching. No, none of that. But what I will say is that I do kind of think he has a point in terms of the politics stuff. I don't think violence against an innocent woman who didn't ask for any of this is the answer. That's just gross. But I kind of think that the whole thing of, like, when he's trained his whole life to take on this role, and now these 2 people turn up and they're just going to be handed it because of nepotism, I kind of side with him on that. But only that. And then he's all like, I'm actually angry now because all of the men in these books have anger issues. Let's throw her off a tower. And Kylie is just like, oh, you're such an attractive man, Seth. Let's do a murder together. And then the whole group of students is like, yeah, might as well. Nothing else going on tonight. So they all plan to throw Darcy off the tower. I know. So Seth puts her on a ledge and he tells her that she can either jump off right now or cut all of her hair off. So death or humiliation and degradation. Her choice. Both horrific. I was like, this is a horror book, right? This sort of thing would not be out of place in a horror book, not a fantasy romance novel. I don't care how dark you like your romance, you shouldn't be rooting for any character who behaves like this. And as an author, you shouldn't be trying to make anyone root for and lust after a character who behaves like this. It's inappropriate, it's honestly dangerous, it's just sickening. I clenched my jaw, furious that I was backed into a corner like this. It was clear that this had been his plan all along. He wanted to make me wholly ridiculed. He wanted the entire house to laugh at me, to humiliate me beyond repair. It wasn't just my hair he was trying to take, it was my dignity. And yeah, because that's what abusers do, and this man is clearly an abuser. I will say it over and over and over again. Do you want to go out, baby? So Darcy chooses to jump off the tower, but then she's like, oh my god, wait, I have air powers, remember? And she's fine. She's absolutely fine. Nope, thanks to this douchebag. What an awful chapter. And it only gets worse. Tori's chapter now. And I was like, let me guess, she's also going to be humiliated, but she uses her fire powers to be fiery or something. But honestly, I think her humiliation is even worse. It's not okay. So she wonders about Darcy and she thinks to herself, I kept thinking about Darcy, wondering if she was doing okay with the air hair. Air hair. I hate saying that. Air. Seth seemed like a bit less of a bumhole than the other 3 on first impressions, but it was hard to be sure. Birds of a feather and all that. In my original notes I wrote, if he's the best of them, then please destroy them all with fire right now. Sophia then confirms that Caleb, who fed off her before, is a vampire. What a shock. And then she warns Tori, vampires are just an order of Fae. Each order replenishes their own magic in different ways. Vampires can't create their own, so they have to take it from others by overpowering them. As freshmen, we're all going to come under a lot of fire from them. We can't defend ourselves with our magic yet, and trying to overpower them physically is crazy difficult. With your magic being as potent as it is, you'll probably find that you get a lot of attention from the vampires while they're able to overpower you, so you might want to get used to it. Great. So we can expect a lot more assaults. Fun. Ridiculous. Sophia then says, but if Caleb decides he likes the way your power tastes, he might want to keep you for himself, as he's one of the most powerful vampires in the school, and the others would all bow to his dominance. Meaning he'd be the only one biting me, I confirmed. Just about understanding where she was going with this, and not sure I liked it one bit. Well, yeah, but look at it this way. If he does, then you'll only have one vampire to worry about instead of the whole order of them. Besides, vampires aren't even the most dangerous order in this school. Some of the creatures here could straight up kill you if you caught them in the wrong moment. At least a vampire needs you alive. And if I had to choose one vampire to be pinning me against a wall and putting his mouth all over me, then Caleb Altair would be top of the list. Ha ha ha, how funny. If I have to be abused, at least it's by someone hot. If someone's gonna rape me and defile my body, At least he's hot. Can we not? Stop it. This kind of crap, especially when written without excessive or overt content warnings, which this book is not, is incredibly dangerous. It's sickening. Whenever I cover these kinds of books, like when I cover the Harrow Fair books, which romanticize non-consent and abuse, I always get people defending it in the comments saying like, but I won't let this affect me. I'd recognise abuse in real life, silly. This is only a book. It isn't clouding my judgment at all. But then the same sorts of people are the ones who go and leave comments on, like, you know, my I'm Alex video and other videos about abuse saying like, oh my god, I didn't see the warning signs at all. I didn't think he was the kind of man to do this. Are you sure it was really abuse? And I'm sorry, but romanticising abuse in this kind of way, in these kinds of books, even when they are fiction, is dangerous, and you cannot convince me otherwise. And that's why I'm going to keep reviewing absolute rubbish like this and calling it out when I see it. And the other thing is, even if this doesn't affect you or you don't think it does, that doesn't mean it's not affecting other people. That doesn't mean it's not still dangerous to others. Alright everyone, I just wanted to go and take a short lunch break and ended up just falling asleep for the entire day because this is where my brain is right now. I'm not in a great mental health space recently and I'm just a bit all over the place, so I need some time off, but I'm back now. It's 7 at night, I've got my lemonade, I've been asleep, this is sleep makeup, whatever's happening with my hair. Yeah, let's do this together, we got this, right. Sophia had just done her whole, it's okay if he abuses you as long as he's hot kind of thing, and then Tori, Darcy, which one are we even on right now? Tori, we're on Tori. Tori agrees because she's an idiot. I had to admit Sophia had a point. I didn't exactly relish the idea of any vampire biting me, but if I had to pick one, then Caleb, with his head of messy blonde curls, eyes as dark blue as the depths of the ocean, and body cut straight from an Abercrombie and Fitch commercial, would probably top the list. Or at least he would if he wasn't such a jackass. I still hate this even after my nap. Tori also has an initiation of sorts, and Darius is like, ooh, you're not cut out for this, and I'm like, ooh, everyone's a pig and it's getting boring. It feels a bit like the initiation was trying to take inspiration from the Trials of Death in the Darren Shan Saga of Darren Shan series, but it just ends up being a mess and not very interesting and not very scary. But it also has some odd moments like this where the walls and floors were black and pockmarked with thousands of tiny holes. Memories pricked at me as I recognised it as a lava tube. One of our foster parents had been obsessed with the Discovery Channel, and the 6 months I spent living there had filled my brain with all kinds of random facts about the world. As lava was like liquid fire, it suddenly made sense for this cave to be a part of the House of Ignis. Sorry, what? Lava is liquid fire? Maybe metaphorically, but not literally. Lava is molten rock that's been expelled onto the Earth's surface, or at least partially. Does that not make it more of an Earth thing? Just because it's hot, that doesn't make it fire. Stupid. There we go. Anyway, Tori has to run across hot coals while being chased by a lion. Standard Friday night in Leeds, really. Don't know what all the fuss is about. She fights some fire monsters, cool, all good. And then, just as she's past what we think is the full initiation, Darius has to publicly humiliate her and degrade her too, because he's a pig and there's a very annoying fly in the house. Oh, come on, buddy, can you please leave? I'm not having a good day, I can't deal with you. Darius decides that he won't let her pass the test until she's walked through a special fire that he's made again, and this fire burns all of her clothes off, and she's now stood naked in front of a large crowd of people. Something else that no one else has to do. He just wanted to violate her and humiliate her and publicly degrade her. It's disgusting. It's abuse. Then, while she's naked and being mocked by literally a couple of hundred people, he publicly hits on her, and she still has butterflies in her stomach from this abusive piece of crap. Just how and why? Stop it. She walks away humiliated and trying not to cry, and I don't blame her because what he's done is abusive. Simple as that. These men also refuse for a long time to use the names that these girls have chosen for themselves. They, instead of calling them Tori and Darcy, they call them by their birth names, which obviously these girls don't like, they don't relate to. So clearly this is another part of control and abuse and essentially dead naming them. It's just, yeah, not okay. Back to Darcy's chapter, she gets her own bedroom, and Seth continues to touch her without consent, and when she tries to ask why, he just says, sickeningly, and this is horrible. He released a gruff noise in his throat. "Because I'm an alpha, babe, and this is how I show you who's in charge. You need to forget about rising against me because you won't win." He tightened his grip on my hair, and I ground my teeth, refusing to let out a yelp of pain. Are we sure this wasn't copied word for word from an incel forum? Are we sure the authors of these books are actually women and not just incels with sick fantasies? He grinned, tugging my hair extra hard, then stepping back entirely, gesturing for me to go past. I pressed my shoulders back, marching past him, feeling his eyes on me all the way as I fought the urge to rub my sore scalp. "You owe me your hair," he called. Sick man. In their rooms, they have these electronic tablets, kind of like iPads, but they're called atlases, because why not? Through these, they can contact each other, see their schedule, blah, blah, blah. There's stupid social media, which we'll get to. And after sleeping, Darcy wakes up to her daily horoscope. I just can't. They keep trying to make this happen, like where the horoscopes are given to us most days and they're meant to hint at something to come, but they're just boring and I've been paying very little attention to them. I just don't care. Then Darcy has to go to a class called Cardinal Magic. One of the things that really bothers me about this book is that in order to go to these classes, this 18-year-old adult woman has to wear a children's school uniform. It has a pleated knee-high skirt, knee-high socks, a blazer. Come on, this is an adult woman. Why are they treating them like children? I just can't. Could be snoring away in the background. Sorry if you can hear her. On the way to class, she meets a girl called Geraldine who is sucking up to her big time. She is part of a society who go by the acronym ASS. Hilarious. What a mature sense of humour these authors have. She says, "My name is Geraldine Gruss or Gruss. I'm not quite sure how you say it. And I am at your service. I want to let you know that you have a loyal band of followers around you, the almighty sovereign society. Do not fear the celestial ruffians who call themselves heirs. You and your sister are the true queens, and they will accept that soon enough." She bowed again, and I sensed eyes on us as students headed by. I had no idea what to say, but I didn't like the attention she was drawing, or the way she referred to Tori and I as queens. We're not actually here for the throne. The heirs are welcome to it, to be honest. "Sacrilege!" she gasped, her dark eyes rounding. "How can you say such a thing, Princess Gwendolina?" Actually I was wrong. Geraldine is actually a nice character as well, but they mock her relentlessly for it. It's quite mean. But yeah, she's one of the few nice people. In class, Tori is there, and they meet this guy called Diego, who is a little bit of a walking cliche. He has to throw at least one Spanish word in every sentence, which feels less like, positive, diverse representation, and more like, how many stereotypes can we fit in this one character? It's not great. This is where they learn that there's a fairy social media site called Facebook. Yep, really. They really went with that. And on that, Max is already threatening them via his status update, so we get a nice little bit of cyberbullying in there as well, because they are children. Again, you want me to believe this is some big, important political fight for power, and you want me to take that seriously, when they're just throwing insults at each other via Facebook statuses. The teacher of this class is Orion, the guy from the beginning who kidnapped Tori and Darcy. And Darcy has some really great insights like, "Now I was sitting in a classroom in front of the hottest teacher I'd ever seen. I'd always had a thing for older guys, and that, coupled with the fact Orion had the sort of face that made me forget to blink, meant I was definitely distracted. What kind of teacher looked like that? Stop it." Orion's like, "You have an exam in the middle of term. If you fail, you're out of the academy. This exam is called The Reckoning, and it's meant to raise stakes," but I was reading this like, why do I care? Everyone seems horrible, just leave. The Reckoning is something that comes up in book 3, so it takes us that long to get through half a term. I know. This class is basically another exposition dump where we learn there are all kinds of these orders of Fae, and which one are our twins? They don't know what their order is. It's going to be a big, big mystery. I really don't care. They go through them all. There's things like vampire, siren, dragon, manticore, griffin, Cerberus, Pegasus, werewolf, blah, 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 blah. It just goes on and on and on. They go on with things like, sirens get scales, vampires have teeth. It would be fun world building if the rest of this book wasn't so damn awful. Maybe if I cared about these characters even a little bit, it would be interesting. So now we know what creatures are in this world, although this is not a complete list, we're told. We can probably guess that Seth is a werewolf, Darius is probably a dragon because he has this whole flame dragon thing going on. And he had like this flame dragon that was flying around him in the last chapter. Max is clearly a siren because of water, and we know Caleb's a vampire because of the whole bitey bite thing. Yeah, I was right, that stuff is just quite obvious. We get a lot of hints through this book and the second book as to what the twins' order is. I don't know what to tell you now or late. I'll tell you now, what the hell. I think they're phoenixes. I haven't had an answer. I haven't read that far yet, but I think they are. Just keep watching, listening, reading along with me, and you'll see all the clues are there. One of them specialises in firepower, one of them specialises in air power, but they have all the elements. We're told that phoenixes are supposedly extinct, which, is supposed to make us discount them, but it's clearly there. They do this thing later where they get fire wings. There's other things as well where they keep being, they're talking about, rebirth and being reborn and all that kind of thing. When they were a kid, I think their human parents died in a fire, but they survived. They're clearly phoenixes, right? They have to be. Anyway, Orion reveals that he too is a vampire and uses this to threaten his students. He then bites and drinks from Diego in front of the whole class as some sort of weird power play because... whatever. And then when a student, I want to say kid, but they're not, they're grown adults. When a student speaks back to him, Orion gives him detention. And this is another way in which they treat these supposed adults in this book like children, giving them detention and using that as a real threat. You want me to believe that adults sit there whispering things like, oh my god, the teacher's so hot, and wearing knee-high socks and being given detention. Come on. Darcy then gets a Facebook message from a mysterious anonymous account called Falling Star, and this is the main mystery of this first book. She's getting these cryptic messages from Falling Star. Overwhelmed with curiosity, I tapped the screen and navigated my way to the app. I found a single message in my inbox from someone called Falling Star, and their profile picture was of a crescent moon. Falling Star says he didn't tell you the whole story, referring to Orion and the stuff that he's teaching in this lesson, I guess. Orion then threatens Darcy because she dared to have notifications on her Atlas, in class. Don't ever lie to me, he growled, and his tone lifted the hairs on the back of my neck. Let's hear it then. What does this message say that is obviously important enough to interrupt my class? Another message has just come through from this Falling Star. For some reason, I think apparently this Falling Star can hear everything going on in the classroom and knows what's going on in the classroom, which is still never explained, but here we are. My breathing became shallow as I glanced down at the message on the screen. I traced the words with my eyes, and my day took a seriously dark turn. It felt like reaching the top of a roller coaster and realizing your harness was unlocked. Out loud, now, Orion demanded. He's a teacher speaking to every 12-year-old who takes a phone into class. I can't. And I spotted Tori shaking her head in my periphery, clearly having read it. And then, he makes her read this message out like she's this 12-year-old kid being told off. This one, she reads it out. It's about Orion. It says, the lump of muscle who teaches your Cardinal magic class. Just to be clear, you'll recognize Orion by the scent of bourbon on his breath. A big inhale sounded from the class. The permanent scowl stamped on his face, and the general air of failed dreams about him since he lost his chance at playing for the Solarian Pitbull League. Yeah, I know. So even though Darcy's not the one who said this stuff and she's been made to read it out, he then publicly mocks her appearance and publicly humiliates her for not knowing stuff about the Fae world, despite the fact that she literally didn't grow up in it and he hasn't taught her anything despite being her teacher. Yeah. If she doesn't know the answers to these questions, that's your fault, mate, not hers. Just saying. He then uses magic coercion, which is real-life coercive abuse, but magic. And this means that they can't escape. He makes them or coerces them to stand on their desks so he can humiliate them further. Apparently most kids are taught to block this out when they grow up, but since Tori and Darcy grew up in the mortal world, obviously they don't know how to do this, and somehow that's their fault. It's literal victim blaming. He then gets the entire class of like 100 and odd students to use coercion magic on Tori and Darcy, getting them to do anything these absolute children want them to do. It's gross. Like, they make them do stupid dances. It's ridiculous. It's really, really stupid. While this is going on, the head teacher walks in. She's like, oh, twins, you need tutoring. Orion, you'll tutor Darcy. Tori, I'll find someone else for you. So clearly this is just trying to set up time for Darcy and Orion to be alone so he can abuse her. Seduce her or something ridiculous. Yeah, I hate this book already. So now it's Tori's chapter again, and after just one class they go for lunch because why not? Useful for the plot, I guess. Very convenient. And there's just several pages of them eating sandwiches, so that's something, I guess. Then they wander around and they see unicorns flying, and they don't realise that the unicorns are shape-shifting students, so they try and pet them, and then one of the guys takes this as an opportunity to basically sexually assault the twins. They think these are just innocent, probably not even sentient animals, so I tentatively reached out a hand, wondering if the glorious creature would allow me to touch his sparkling coat. The unicorn's eyes seemed to glimmer with amusement as he leaned forward so that my fingertips swept over his soft nose and into his mane. The unicorn pressed closer, rubbing the side of his face against my cheek and eliciting a laugh from me. He pressed his face against Darcy's next, and she grinned like a Cheshire cat as she wrapped her arms around his neck. The silver unicorn pushed his face against my chest again, and I ran my hand along his neck in response. Be careful you don't scare him, I began, but the unicorn beside me let out a snort which sounded annoyed, before suddenly lurching towards me and turning into a boy with frosted tips in his hair and a huge grin on his face. He also happened to be butt naked, which apparently didn't faze him in the slightest. My hand, which had been pressed on the unicorn's neck, was now planted on his chest. I snatched it back with a cry of disgust, and Darcy let out a scream, jerking backwards and falling on her bum. Well, now we've gotten the foreplay out of the way, are you girls going to be coming back to my room? Tyler asked me and Darcy with a wink. You're a unicorn, Darcy yelled in confusion as my brain struggled to comprehend what just happened. Pegasus, Tyler corrected, and you two were all over me. His grin was widening, if that was even possible, and I suddenly caught on to what he was saying. The beautiful creature we'd just been petting had actually been him. Did you nuzzle my chest? I asked in disgust. Yeah, Tyler replied, dropping his gaze to my breasts, which were thankfully hidden beneath my shirt. Yeah, this feels like sexual assault via deception, and I don't like it at all. Also, I'm just going to bring up this little pet peeve I have now. They name whole orders of creatures not after the kind of creature they are, but after like specific ones from mythology. So instead of gorgons, they have the Medusa order. Instead of unicorns, or I guess they're not really unicorns, but they have the Pegasus order. Instead of, let me try and think of, what's the other one? Instead of like 3-headed giant dogs, they have the Cerberus order. It's not really a big thing, but it just annoys me. Like, Medusa isn't a Medusa. She's a gorgon. So people who look like her are gorgons, not Medusa. I don't know, annoys me a bit. Anyway, Darcy goes off to Air Class, and Tori and Sophia, who is also a unicorn/Pegasus, go to Fire Class. Now this is interesting because at the start of this first book, they have separate Air and Fire classes, and they each do that separately. I think it's just to get them into different places at the same time, because by the second and third book, they're then doing those classes together. It makes no sense. Anyway, the whole Zodiac thing in general doesn't really come up as much as it probably should in a book called Zodiac Academy, but there are a few cringy lines, like this one where Sophia is exposition dumping on... which twin? Tori. Exposition dumping on Tori. And she says, I like facts. I'm a Sagittarius, which helps. We love learning new things and are usually pretty intelligent. Now they get to Fire Class, and of course, the fire teacher is called Professor Pyro. Really. I can now see how these authors were inspired by J.K. Rowling's ridiculous method of naming things, which is basically calling things after what they are and pretending it's wordplay. You know, think Diagon Alley, think calling a werewolf Lupin, and so on. It's exactly the same here. The fire teacher is called Pyro. And we get it so much more. It gets really bad. Just remember this point and keep an ear out for it, because there's some ridiculous ones. Caleb, the blonde guy, the vampire who bit her, the abusive piece of crap, the head of the Earth House, he is for some reason in the same fire class as her. I don't understand why. It's like they just put all these students of different abilities in the same class at the same time and expect a teacher to be able to wrangle them all at once. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. He immediately starts torturing her by making the ground move under her so she falls over, and then he can catch her when she falls with, touching her without permission, and then he knocks her over again and then catches her again, and then he knocks her down, straddles her, and bites her. It's just abuse. It's not okay. There's nothing hot or sexy or exciting about this, is there? Caleb removed his fangs from my neck, and I watched in morbid fascination as they withdrew into normal-looking teeth again. He licked the last drops of my blood from his lips as he looked down at me, amusement flickering in his eyes. "You have no idea how good you taste," he said without a hint of shame, and I scrunched up my nose in disgust. Yeah, this is disgusting. Can we just set him on fire right now, please? That would be a good thing to do. Caleb tilted his head as he regarded me, and a slow smile spread across his face. "I'm not sure I've ever fed from anyone who hates it quite as much as you do," he said almost to himself. "The other Fae have grown up knowing about my kind, and they just accept this as part of the chain of power. But you, just because abuse is normalized doesn't make it okay." "This girl is my personal source," he said loudly to the group who had gathered around us, which I realized had grown to at least 50 people. "If any other vampire wants to feed from her, then they can take it up with me. Spread the word." A weight built in my gut as I managed to regain my feet, and I glared at him. "I'm not your personal anything," I snapped. "Feel free to try and stop me, sweetheart," he mocked. "But until you can manage it, you can consider yourself my own personal jukebox." So look, the abuser is publicly stating that he plans to abuse and control and use her body, and everyone is just like, yeah, cool, whatever. Can we just stop it? Darius is also in this class for God knows what reason, and they've come over because him and Caleb, because they want to see how powerful Tori is, apparently, because sure, whatever, I'm sure they have nothing better to do. Darius cast one look at me as he walked away, and I cursed myself for noticing the way the tight outfit clung to his muscular body before turning back to my teacher. Again, I say stop it a lot in this video and my scripts, but can we just stop it? Bullies and abusers aren't attractive no matter how tight their clothing is. I feel like Kubi's here right now. I feel like I should be covering her ears so she doesn't hear this nonsense. Turns out Tori has lots of firepower, and even though she has the magic of all 4 elements, she specializes mostly in firepower, because of course she does, whatever. So Professor Pyro, and I still can't believe I'm actually saying that name, is like, "You need a tutor more powerful than me. You'll be tutored by Darius." So once again, we have this plot contrivance trying to bring these 2 characters alone, probably so they can have sex. But what's funny is that he just refuses to do it until midway through the 2nd book, so that's a thing, I guess. This will be good for him too. Melding your power with another phase is a skill that is hard to master, so it'll be a perfect opportunity for him to flex those muscles. It takes a lot of concentration, and it can be really quite intimate, as the 2 of you will have to strive towards a level of trust so your magic can work in harmony with one another. Intimate? Gross. Though not as gross as I was trying to convince myself. Also, I don't get why these 2 are literally twins. If you can meld your magic with another and do this thing where you wield magic together, why aren't they encouraging them to try that? Because surely they'd be ridiculously powerful if they did it. Spoiler, they do it at one point, but it's only kind of by accident at the end of book 2, so I think everyone in these books is just an idiot. We cut back to Darcy's chapter, and God, how are we not even through this? How are we not even halfway through this book? It is just dragging. Nothing is happening. And having now been through this several times, I can't deal with this. Oh my God. Look, I'll be honest with you, I'm very, very exhausted. In the last 3 days, I have read over 1,000 pages of these books. I have written 150 pages of video script, and I've taken a mock maths exam, so I just want to be curled up in bed playing RuneScape on my laptop, I'll be honest. That's all I want. But if I don't film, bills can't be paid, and I would like to keep a home, please. So, Darcy has her first tutoring session with Orion tonight. God, you should see your original notes here. I was like, sarcastically, I can't wait. Ooh, I wonder what'll happen. More angry grunting, him getting mad at her for not knowing stuff. Aggression disguised as sexual tension. Maybe a full-on assault. Who knows? I can't wait. Oh, God, these books really brought out the snark in me. On her way to the tutoring session, she trips over because she's such a clumsy, quirky little girl who's always falling over and me. My foot caught on a root and I stumbled, nearly hitting the ground before catching myself at the last second. I muttered curses at myself as I hurried on, wanting to get out of this place without a couple of scuffed knees. Honestly, I should have grown out of it by now, but I fell over more times in a week than was normal for a toddler, let alone a grown woman. I know. Even you don't fall over that much, little Miss Clumsy. On the way, she gets another anonymous message from Falling Star. I really don't care about it. And along the way, she, of course, bumps into Darius and Seth, Dragon and Werewolf, who both take the opportunity to, you guessed it, bully and abuse her, because this is what they do. Now, for some reason, Darcy is afraid of the woods, despite Seth and Darius being the only things in the woods that she should be afraid of. So she asks Darius to walk her out of the woods to safety. I don't even know why. He is like, okay, and then he physically drags her along and then uses the coercion spell to make her kiss his feet. Literally, it is sickening. It's just abuse. There's no other word for this. And somehow, throughout all this, she's still attracted to them. How? Darius took my arm, dragging me to my feet with a vicious smile. I have a better idea. Get off me, I snapped, trying to pull away. My heart stumbled as I stared into the fiery pit of excitement in his eyes. He released me and I glanced between him and Seth, their beautiful faces dancing with shadows under the glowing orb above. Seth licked his lips and the sight was so sexual I couldn't help but stare at his mouth for a second. Run, Darius ordered, and my legs moved before I realized what was happening. Part of me wants to refuse to believe that this was actually written by women. And if it was, then they seriously need some therapy. Like, a lot of it. Max and Caleb show up too while Darcy is being chased. Caleb gets physical and creepy by licking her face and her ear, again without consent, and they all team up to use their power to once again harass and humiliate her. This is just abuse. Max raised his hands and water fell down on me in a torrential rain shower, soaking me from head to foot. My white t-shirt turned transparent and I raised my hands to cover myself, my breath halting in shock. This is a weird kink that the authors have. They love transparent t-shirts and shirts. Keep an eye out for it because you will see it so many times throughout these books. No shame if you're into that in real life, but the amount of times it's just shoehorned into these stories is a bit odd. Caleb wielded the ground beneath my feet and mud splashed up around me in a ring. I was suddenly caked in freezing cold sludge and my heart was screaming with rage and embarrassment. I wiped the back of my hand over my eyes to try and remove the filth, my pulse hammering in my ears. As I regained my sight, I found Darius and Seth side by side before me. Seth blew a harsh wind over the top of the fire burning in Darius's palms. The combined effect was like being blasted in an oven. And I gasped in horror as the sticky substance coating me dried to a hard, impenetrable second skin. No. I clawed at it, but it wouldn't budge. My hair hung in thick chunks, and my face felt like it had been pasted with the biggest mud pack ever. When they do stuff like this, stop trying to tell me that they're attractive in any way, because they're not. Tears burned my eyes, understandably, as I was consumed by the utter shame of this situation. Understandably. And the worst was yet to come, because I had to ask goddamn Professor Hot as Boop Orion to help me while looking like the beast from the bog. I hate this book. Reading it makes me feel dirty and degraded. The authors clearly get off on humiliating women, and it makes me so uncomfortable. So she goes to Orion, and as her teacher, as someone who is supposedly responsible for her and her well-being and has a position of power over her, he laughs at her and gets drunk. Wow, great. Also, this man is very clearly an alcoholic. I say that not to judge him and alcoholics in general, but just because it's treated as this fun, silly quirk of his, when it's like, no, that's an illness he should be getting treatment for. He then, once he's a bit drunk, does help clean the mud off Darcy, and then he tries to bite her as repayment for doing the bare minimum of helping her. Great. Then he does bite her, and he drains her power. Lovely. Orion gave me an even stare. Everything in Solaria is about power, Miss Vega. Don't forget that. Everyone takes what they want. It's our way. If you don't start taking it yourself, you're going to fail at this academy before you've even attempted to pass the reckoning. Oh, so daily abuse is normal?
Well, that's all right then.
And then finally we get a little bit of... no. First time I read this, I wrote in my notes that this was a little bit of plot development, and I was quite excited for it. But looking back now, it's not relevant. It's not helpful. It's not actually plot development, it's just more filler. Orion does a power assessment on Darcy, which means looking at her hand, taking measurements, and reading her palm. From this, he assesses what her levels are in different powers. Apparently her fire power is a 7 out of 10, her earth is an 8, water is a 9, and air is a 10. How lucky that she happens to be an air house then. Wow, what a coinky dink. And then we get another exposition dump as he gives her a history of her parents. Her dad was a super powerful king and he could control 3 elements. Her mum could only control 1 and she wasn't very powerful, but she was super beautiful, which means something apparently. What in the misogyny is this? You'll find so many instances in these books of these super powerful, really angry men who do all this bad stuff, and then they just have a hot wife who stands by silently and lets it happen. I hate it. Apparently their mother was a harpy, their dad was a hydra, so they are... no one knows. Ooh, what a mystery. Orion makes the excellent point again that what's not fair, Miss Vega, is that you and your sister have now a stronger claim to the throne of Solaria than the 4 celestial heirs who have been training their entire lives to rule. He is a pig, but I am with him on this. He has a point. Not a fan of nepotism, I'll be honest. He then complains that their world has a nymph problem, and I know how that sounds, but no, a problem with actual nymphs going around murdering people. And that at least the celestial heirs, the 4 abusive guys, know how to deal with the nymph population, which once again kind of feels rooted in misogyny to me. Just saying. QB, why do I have your fur in my lemonade, young lady? Okay, next chapter is Tori's again. She gets another daily horoscope. I do not care. At this point, we have spent more than 160 pages in this world, and we've heard about 2 days. I can't. This day starts with some casual, misogynistic cyberbullying. And I don't know if you call this revenge porn, but it's definitely porn being posted without consent. It's sexual harassment, definitely. Someone took a photo of Tori naked when Darius stripped her with the fire without her consent, posted it online, and now everyone is being really rude about it and cyberbullying her. Other women are posting comments like, whores go hairless, while men comment that they wouldn't say no, and next time Darius will have her on her knees, gagging on it. Can we not? These are supposed to be grown adults, and they're behaving like disgusting, misogynistic 13-year-old bullies. And also, can we not have everyone being so okay with sexual assault, sexual harassment, and rape, please? In response for this person who is called Milton, posting explicit images of a woman without her consent, you know, a literal crime, the only punishment he gets is 10 house points docked. I hate this book. I hate this situation. I hate everything about everything. Thankfully though, Tori doesn't let him get completely away with it though, and attacks him with an ice-cold shower of water, which in this case I would say is thoroughly deserved. And just when we thought we might be able to like her, Tori also starts throwing around misogynistic body-shaming insults at other women, specifically Darius's girlfriend, and the girlfriend throws them right back, and there's just a hell of a lot of internalized misogyny going on in this scene. They start calling each other whores, and I can't believe I'm saying that. They start fighting about pubic hair, and what style of pubic hair is okay and what isn't. It's pathetic. Who writes this nonsense? She leaves, and there is another scene with the almighty Sovereign Society people grovelling, and I can't cope with it. Nothing has happened in this book so far. Where is the plot? Where is the plot? They go to their water magic lesson together this time, and continuing the trend of stupid names, their water teacher is called Professor Washer. I know. Can we not? This teacher is also a massive creep. I'll be honest, he's bad, but he's not as bad as many of the men in this book, but apparently he's the only one that they actually call out for it and don't like him being a creep. I don't know why, it's weird. This is his first introduction. "Come along, girls, no time to dilly-dally. The rest of your class have already headed in." A deep voice came from behind us, and I turned to find a man striding towards us. Although man wasn't exactly the right word to describe him. He only wore a pair of small, super black shorts to cover his junk, and every inch of his exposed, muscular body was covered in iridescent blue scales. He stepped towards us, placing a hand on each of our shoulders as he looked down at us. "I'm Professor Washer," he said kindly. "Are you worried about the class today?" "I am a little," I admitted, immediately wondering why I'd been so forthright with this stranger. The place where his skin met mine, beneath the fabric of my uniform, felt warm and oddly comforting, and it tingled a little at my admission. "And how are you girls settling in? I heard the other heirs have been giving you a bit of a hard time," he said, concern lacing his voice. I was so surprised to hear one of the teachers acknowledge the awful behaviour of the other students that I didn't even know how to respond, but Darcy beat me to it anyway. "They're horrible," she admitted, her voice catching a little. There, Professor Washer said as he pulled us both into a hug. It should have felt weird to embrace a teacher who was wearing skin-tight tiny trunks and had scales covering his flesh, but it was oddly comforting. I pressed my cheek to his bare chest and I exhaled deeply, letting go of a whole host of the anguish which had been building up inside me since our arrival. I could feel a strange tugging sensation in my chest, kind of like I was using my power reserves somehow, but that didn't make any sense. Darcy squeezed Professor Washer tightly beside me, and I smiled at her tear-stained face as she glanced at me. A bark of laughter pulled me to my senses, and Professor Washer released us with a smirk. Max Rigel was looking at us with a highly amused expression on his face, and my cheeks flushed with embarrassment as I realised he'd just seen us cuddling our nearly nude teacher. What the hell just got into us? To make matters worse, Darius A. Crooks sauntered up beside him, his face falling into an amused grin as his gaze turned our way. "Thanks for that, girls," Professor Washer said, his voice a little mocking. "Anytime you need a shoulder to cry on, you can come my way." I frowned in confusion as a sense of safety and warmth from his embrace abandoned me, and I suddenly realised I'd been hugging a half-naked stranger in the middle of the path. "What was that?" I demanded, feeling sure we'd just fallen prey to something, but unsure what. The professor only chuckled, parting the waterfall with a wave of magic as he headed beneath it, leaving us alone with Max and Darius. "You two really don't know anything about the world, do you?" Darius asked, his disgust at that fact clear. "How can you expect to rule over people you know nothing about?" I frowned at Darcy in confusion. All this talk of heirs and birthrights and claiming power was great, but no one had actually asked us what we wanted to do. "The professor's a siren like me," Max explained in a tone which suggested he was talking to a pair of children. "We draw energy from our hosts by feeding on their emotions, so I wouldn't go feeling all mushy over him caring about you. He just drained a crap load of your power while you cried your little eyes out for him." So I know I just read a lot at you, but basically a half-naked, fully grown man just manipulated two students in his care into giving him some of their power and releasing a bunch of emotions just so he could take something from them, get something from them. Literally everyone in this book is a piece of crap. And this isn't even the worst thing he does. He does this a lot. He will steal lust-filled memories from the girls. He touches people without their consent. He eyes them up and ogles them. It's just lots of creepy predatory stuff, but the only difference is, for some reason, this teacher is the only one who's ever called out for it. I don't understand why. I don't get the double standard. Maybe it's because, no, he has muscles too, so that can't be it. I don't know. Max then mocks them and says he's a siren too, like we heard. He touches Darcy's chest without her consent because he says he wants to feed off her feelings of lust. That is sexual assault. Absolutely. They then get soaked going through the waterfall, and creepy teacher decides to creep more by saying he'll dock house points if they come to class wet again. But listen to this, he says, "Although those transparent shirts will give the boys a thing or two to look at." Again with the transparent shirts. Also, arrest him, please. He's also a creep in terms of what he makes them and the other women wear for this class. Once again, bags hung on the hooks with our training outfits awaiting us, and I quickly shed my saturated uniform for a deep blue bathing suit with the aqua symbol emblazoned across the midriff. It had a plunging neckline which showed off way more cleavage than seemed appropriate for lessons, and rode high over my hips, as well as revealing a good chunk of my bum. "Do you think the professor chose this uniform?" Darcy asked, wrinkling her nose in disgust as she attempted to cover her chest with her hair. "I think I've worn bikinis with more material," I agreed. "Police, please! We need the police." Anyway, that's it. Thoroughly pointless, this chapter. Chapter ends next day. Darcy's chapter. Today she has a class with the werewolves to see if she's secretly a werewolf. That's the thing. So this morning in the news, there is a report about a nymph having killed a man with fire and earth powers. So that's something. This is actually a little bit of plot. This is important, and it only took us 185 pages to get there. Look at that. Diego then tells us everything we need to know about nymphs in another exposition dump. He says, nymphs are another race. They live in the shadows of Fae. They're our enemies. Because nymphs are born with elemental powers, but if they kill a Fae, they absorb all of their magic, every last drop, and then they can use it against us. That's, sick. And it means nymphs are always a danger. They hunger for magic even more than a vampire does. And you know how they take it? They have the gift of the shadows, able to drain a Fae of its power. They do it using these probes. Their fingernails grow all long and drive right into the hearts of Fae and suck out all their powers. I'm being a nymph for some reason. Diego seemed to have a morbid fascination with the idea, but it just made me sick to the stomach. So yeah, they sound bad. Cool. Nice to have a villain. Nice to have something happening. I like this. It's nice that we've got a threat other than just abusive men. He also tells Darcy that there's a thing where people can have their memories magically removed, and there's a conspiracy theory that the faculty are secretly practicing dark magic. I was like, mate, darker than what we've seen? Come on. Everyone is a bad person in this book, and nothing surprises me. What's interesting, though, is that so far in everything I've read, this has not come up again. This has not been mentioned once. Anyway. At breakfast, Tori says that the heirs are acting weird, and I do not care. Milton, the idiot who shared the naked photos of Tori, tries to use coercion on the twins to get them to make out with each other, so now we have incest mixed in with the bullying. I'm revolted. I don't understand how anyone can actually enjoy these parts of the book. I just don't. Finally, the people who are supposed to be their friends have this idea to teach them how to use this magical shield to protect themselves from coercion, and it is about time. I do not understand why it's taken this long. And then they go to tarot class with Professor Astrum. Yeah, again, tarot class, not divination class. Tarot class. Even though they learn all forms of divination, it's tarot class. Anyway, they actually do some tarot card reading. Darcy picks the High Priestess card, and I think she's working with Sophia on this. She shook her head apologetically, plucking the card from my hand. This means someone's being dishonest with you or withholding information. Yeah, like everyone in the school. Literally everyone. Darcy says, I feel like someone's watching me and there's fire. And then the teacher holds her hand and goes, he cleared his throat, brushing down his dark robes. He dropped his voice to a deadly whisper, leaning closer. Beware of your enemies, girl. They are made of fire and shadow. He turned away, moving to help another pair of students, while I was left to stew on what he said. Real helpful there, mate. Good job. And in my original notes at this point, I said, you know what though, at least this has the potential to be interesting. There could be plot here. And yeah, I did want to know what happens in this world with the nymphs, the secrets, the politics. I still want to know that stuff. It's just everything else that I absolutely hate. If they stop telling us how hot all these terrible people are and give us maybe like a genuinely nice character and stop giving us 50 pages of torture porn for every 1 page of actual plot, it might not be the worst book ever. But as it stands, I can only judge based on what is in front of me, what we had, not what I wish we had, and as it stands, this book is terrible. The naming gets even more ridiculous when the werewolf teacher is literally called Professor Canis. That's as bad as Professor Lupin, isn't it? Come on. My god, can you imagine if this happened in our world? I would be a farmer for life. No other option. This werewolf class is just absolutely ridiculous, as everyone just gets naked, including the teacher, and starts running around, with some of them eventually turning into werewolves, so that's fun. It's a thing that happens, I guess. Seth then comes over in wolf form, and for some reason the twins ride around on his back a while, because I don't even know why, I don't know. Eventually he turns back to human, and he says to them, "Did you like riding me?" he asked suggestively. Ew, can he not? Now, despite Tori showing to have no issues with water or deep water or being in a lake in the water magic class, and that was all absolutely fine for her, for some reason she's decided now, like 2 chapters later, that she is scared of deep water and refuses to get in a lake with Darcy and the wolves. Where is the consistency? In Tori's chapter, she has a brief meeting with her tutor, who is a woman who Tori has no interest in having sex with, so no real time or effort goes into explaining who this character is or ever showing her again. We get an awkward reason for why Tori doesn't actually have to meet with her, and then she's just forgotten about. We never see her again. At least we haven't up until book 3. Not once. Tori goes for a walk. She sees a griffin. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing more to tell there. She then overhears the heirs having a little secret meeting together, which is mostly just them chatting and putting a load of women down and calling them all ugly, including this one where they mock Darius for having an arranged marriage to his second cousin, and they all mock her appearance with like, okay then, are you all set to marry your second cousin, and did she ever manage to get rid of that growth on her face? What growth on her face? No, Caleb, that growth is her face, remember? Ha 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 ha. Hilarious. Women are worthless if they're not conventionally attractive, right? We then learn that there's lots of like order racism going on, so Darius is dating Marguerite, who it turns out is a Sphinx, and Darius is like, my dad will never let me marry her because she's a Sphinx, blah blah. Can you really see my father going for a Sphinx as an alternative? They're 10 a penny and half as useless in combat, plus she's only a level 6 in fire, no secondary power at all. Besides, I prefer my women to present more of a challenge, and she's far too ordinary to make the cut long term. They want him to marry his second cousin because she's also a dragon, and they want the whole like family to be pure dragon and all that nonsense. It's racism. That's all it is. A lot of racism. And I feel like this last line here about preferring his women to present more of a challenge, this is clearly setting it up for Darius to seduce one of the twins because he wants to make use of their power. Exactly what I predicted in the beginning. Yeah, it's too obvious. Tori also points out that these guys actually seem to respect each other and would never seriously hurt each other or take power from each other without consent, which seems sweet until you realise that everything they've been doing to the twins, it's clearly because they don't respect them or see them as equals, and that's why they don't care about hurting or publicly humiliating them, and that makes it all the worse, doesn't it? Caleb says he's weak because he didn't feed on Tori, and he only wants to feed on her because, you know, I like my power how I like my spirits. Top shelf or nothing. I enjoy the way Tori tastes, and she's got more power in her blood than even you bumholes. The other three shifted uncomfortably at that comment, and Caleb shrugged, running a hand through his blonde curls. There's no point in denying it, he said. We all know what their potential is, which is why we need to make sure they fail the reckoning, Max growled. Again, finally a little bit of plot, but this bit in particular barely pays off until the 3rd book. I mean, they do horrible stuff to them, but anyway. Then they make jokes about waking Tori up in the morning, and I'm pretty sure they hint towards gang rape, which is repulsive. Or you can meet me at Igna's house in the morning and wait outside Tori's room to surprise her, Darius suggested with a smirk, and I ground my teeth angrily. If we get really lucky, we might find out that she sleeps naked. I'm surprised you haven't found that out already, Max said suggestively, and Darius's mouth hooked into a half smile, which made me bristle and flush red at the same time. Yeah, I might take you up on that, Caleb replied, his own smile widening. Why don't we all show up, Seth said enthusiastically. We can give her a wake-up call. She'll never forget. If that's not hinting at gang rape, I don't know what is. It's disgusting as hell. Darius then goes off by himself, makes a suspicious phone call. Turns out it's to Orion. Tori finds out because he follows him and finds him having a secret meeting with Orion in the teacher's block thing. Basically, they talk about how they need to murder the twins. Kill them, end them now, blah blah blah. We could do it now while they're sleeping. But Orion says, not yet. Not yet. If we're wrong, we could end up taking innocent lives. It's too hard to be sure with the information we have. Just give it a few more days. I'll see her again. I'll confirm our suspicions. In a few days, they could be even more powerful. You've seen what's happened since the start of term. The longer we give them to adjust to their power, the more chance we have of them figuring out how to harness it and turn it against us. If you're afraid that you aren't up to the job, then let me call on the others for help. You know they want to destroy them almost as much as we do. So now we know that Darius, Orion, and the other guys don't just want these girls expelled or to fail an exam. They want them dead. They want to murder them. They are plotting murder. They are going to attempt murder. Can we please stop calling them hot? They want you literally dead. Okay, we're finally a little over halfway through this book, and we cut back to Darcy's chapter. And I find it so hard to distinguish these twins from one another. There is so little to tell them apart. I struggle to remember whose chapter I'm reading half the time. Tori goes to Darcy's room and tells her anything. They decide to message this anonymous falling star, who replies about Orion, I don't like the company he keeps. Darcy says, do you mean Darius? My heart was fit to burst as we waited on their reply. Yes. Holy poop, Tori breathed in my ear. I tapped out under the question, my teeth clenched together. Do you know what they're up to? No. Useful, thank you. I sighed, lowering the atlas when another message came through. But I do know this. Anyone in allegiance with the Acrux family is bad news. Don't trust them. But why? I believe the House of Acrux was involved in the death of your birth parents, and I have my suspicions that the other heir families assisted. Yeah, honestly, that's not surprising. I thought that was pretty obvious. I mean, who else benefited from their death, right? They sent this newspaper article about their parents' death. Apparently it was made to look like a nymph murder, or whoever arranged their killings used nymphs to do it, so there's that, okay? The next morning, Kylie is acting like a child again. Kylie was parading through the room, handing out bright pink leaflets as she danced between the aisles. "Freshest party in the Orb next Friday," she said brightly, arriving at our row. She clutched the leaflets in her hand as she glanced between Tori and I, her rich amber eyes moving between us like a viper about to strike. "Oh, I suppose you guys won't be coming." She waved a leaflet in front of our faces with a mock frown. "Why?" Sophia took the bait. "Because no one wants you there," she said with a poison ivy glare, and I bristled with unease. This is not an 18-year-old woman. So they go to their Cardinal magic class. Orion comes into the room and measures Tori's powers, which is, I thought, clearly part of his plot to kill them or something. But no, he's genuinely just measuring their powers. It never comes up again. And then, just because he can and he's a vampire, he drinks blood from Tori. This is shared on social media, and Caleb gets mad because Tori should be just his. She's his source. Blah, 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 blah. Can men stop trying to possess women for 5 minutes, please? Can't they? He looked like he was about to murder every one of us when the door flew wide open and Caleb sprinted into the room, diving over Orion's desk. He slammed the professor against the board, and a collective inhale sounded around me. My heart took a free dive as Orion shoved him off with a blast of air, and Caleb's head slammed into the desk, sending a crack up the middle of the wood. Caleb snarled like a beast, slashing at Orion's face with a handful of flames. "Enough!" Orion bellowed before Caleb could land a strike. The terror air paused, and it felt like everyone in the class had turned to stone. Tension rippled through the air as Caleb extinguished the flames in his palms, a low growl emitting from his throat. "She's my source. Touch her again and you're dead, professor or not." Orion snatched the front of his shirt, pulling him within an inch of his face. "Get out of my classroom." This is absolutely pathetic, isn't it? Absolutely. Two grown adult men fighting over who gets to control a woman's body. I know. "I don't belong to anyone," Tori snapped, and I nodded my agreement. When Orion didn't respond, Caleb pushed the professor off him so hard his back smashed into the board. Tense mutters broke out in class, and I realized I was clutching the edge of my desk, my knuckles turning white. "Fine," Orion said in a deadly tone, "but the other Vega twin is mine." "Excuse me?" I gasped, but they continued to ignore us. So honestly, just like real life. Men discussing women like we're just objects for them to use, them deciding what happens to our bodies like we're not there, and we're somehow expected to find it sexy and hot. Ew, it's not. Stop it. Again, this would be peak horror in a horror novel if these guys were actually presented as the villains they are, but instead we're supposed to root for them and find them attractive and sexy and want them to get with the female main characters. This is meant to be a romance book. Why? There's more instances of the students in this class just acting like absolute children. Again, I refuse to believe they're 18 or 19 years old. Orion gets his class to name constellations. One of the constellations that's stuck in my mind from those long ago days. I cleared my throat. The Little Bear? Correct. He pointed at Diego beside me, which is also known as the Little Dipper, sir, he supplied. "I bet Diego's got a little dipper," Tyler Corbin snorted from the front row. Orion gets Darcy to be alone with him after class. Now, call me crazy, but if you knew a man was plotting to kill you and was planning on literally feeding on you without your consent until the moment he gets to kill you, would you stay behind with him alone after class? I'd say no, but maybe that's just me. I assume most of you would say no as well. That's because, unlike Darcy, you're not an idiot. Not to victim blame, but she's stupid. We cannot deny that. He wants to explain to her what it means to be his source. "I don't want to be your source," I said immediately. My skin was itching at the mere idea of it. "Until you manage to stop me, I'm afraid that's not your decision." He gave me a bemused look, and I scowled at him, tempted to shout, Is it just my magic you want, or is it my life too? You will tell me if any other vampire bites you. That is non-negotiable, Miss Vega. I will make it known to the Academy that you're mine, and that save us any more incidents like today. I'm not likely to be challenged by anyone except Caleb, but now that's been settled, we should have no more issues. However, if another vampire happens to take a liking to you, you will tell me. He didn't coerce me, and I had to wonder why. Maybe he wanted me to agree to this on my own terms, and an internal battle took hold of me as I thought about what he was demanding. At least this would stop other vampires taking a bite out of me in corridors, but that was about the only plus side I could see. How often do you expect to feed from me? I folded my arms and his brow lifted. Once or twice a week, he shrugged, but if I become drained, then it may be more. I nodded stiffly, knowing I didn't have a choice anyway. I'd take the small benefit of not being bitten by other vampires in the meantime. I'd work my bum off to harness my magic. It's abusive and controlling, isn't it? I lifted my chin and the air became thick between us. One day, Professor, I'm going to be strong enough to fight you off. He took a measured breath and I felt like he was sucking something vital out of my body that I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. I know, he said, his eyes glittering, but until that day, your mind blew. So Goodreads showed me that this, until that day your mind blew, is one of the most quoted lines in the book, and I have no idea why. This isn't sexy, it isn't romantic, it's just horrifying and controlling. Darius then sexually harasses Tori in the post room in the next chapter, and then she goes to Earth Magic class with Professor Rockford. I know. This is followed by a scene in a dark cave where Seth sexually harasses Tori. These men just do not know when to stop. And also, don't they all have girlfriends? I can't cope with any of this. It's terrible. A hand landed on my shoulder and I flinched as Seth Capella pushed his face into my hair, inhaling deeply. Where have you been hiding, little Vega? He asked, the arm around me tightening as I tried to push him off. I think we've established I'm not of your order, I growled as I shoved him away more firmly. So how about you cut the touchy-feely stuff with me? You know, I could take offense to that, he said, catching the hand which I was using to push him back and linking his fingers through mine for a moment. Order shaming isn't cool, but apparently abuse is. I extracted my fingers and managed to pull out of his grip as I offered him a scowl in the dim light. It's not order shaming, I just prefer to keep my body to myself unless I'm the one choosing to share it, right? Caleb joins, and together they trap Tori in a tunnel and harass her some more and shame her for allowing herself to be attacked and fed from by Orion. Again, victim blaming, can we not? She tries to get around them, but they close ranks, stopping me. I own you. I want to hear you say it, Tori, Caleb said, his voice rough. Who do you belong to? He's absolutely insane. This is terrifying. Like I say, he would be a great horror villain. Absolutely. I don't know how many times I can say this, though. This isn't romance. Before I could decide on how much my pride meant to me, Caleb shot forward and wrenched me off my feet. He tossed me over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and raced further into the tunnel as if I didn't weigh a thing. I cursed and hit him, trying to make him put me down, as he shot along with the unnatural speed of his order. Caleb set me on my feet with a boyish grin that could almost have made me believe he wasn't a total bastard. Ignore the dimples, Tori. He is an award-winning dickosaurus. I don't get paid enough to read these sentences out loud. And can we stop romanticizing abuse already, please? I glanced at his broad shoulders and mischievous eyes for all of half a second before I turned away, refusing to be blinded to his bumhole nature by the pretty shell which housed it. Why do I have such terrible taste in men? It's not you, love, it's the authors. They have unhealthy views of what's romantic, sexy, healthy, a good relationship. Just because they get you to acknowledge the problem doesn't make it okay. Anyway, they decide to teach her a lesson by dangling her over a cliff face, or off a cliff face over pointy rocks below. Fun, also attempted murder. Solaria has been much better off since the Vegas left the throne to the celestial families, Seth growled. Since our parents took up the throne that yours left cold, our world has been a better place. We don't need you to come back here and claim it for yourselves. We don't want you to. Yeah, good point, but maybe you could try, talking this out like adults instead of trying to kill them and abuse them and manipulate them and rape them at every opportunity. Just a thought. Crazy, I know. And also, I'm sorry, but you say you've been training this for your whole lives, but how good of a ruler is a vicious, abusive bully actually going to be? Because I wouldn't want you in charge of me. No chance. Alright everyone, I hope you don't mind me switching to this, but it's very hot today. I am kind of a little bit disgusting and I really didn't want to get on camera. So I figured I would just record a voiceover and you've got this little animated version of me, courtesy of Adobe, to look at. The mouth syncing might be a little off. It's not perfect. I'm not doing any like face tracking or expression stuff, but yeah, we're just going with this for now, and we're going to carry on with the rest of the book. So, where were we? Okay, I have this to read. Look, all we want is to learn how to control this magic inside us and get our inheritance. That's it. We grew up with no one and nothing. Before we came here, we weren't even sure if we were going to be able to keep a roof over our heads for the winter. I swear we have zero interest in claiming any throne or taking your places. Seth and Caleb exchanged a look, and I couldn't read what they meant by it in their expressions. I say we drop her, Seth said with a shrug of his powerful shoulder, which made me lurch beneath him. So anyway, she uses her newfound coercion skills to get them to pull her up while their defenses are down, but then Caleb feeds from her again and gets super aggressive, because of course he does. Come on. My heart leapt and Caleb's fingers knotted in my hair as his other hand gripped my waist, dragging me against the hard lines of his body. My own hands had made it into his arms, the tight press of his biceps unyielding beneath my fingers. It was almost like we were locked in an embrace, if I could just ignore the teeth which were lodged in my throat. Which I really couldn't. Yeah, you think? So Seth and Caleb just talk about her like she's not even there, just using her as this object and then abandoning her when they're bored because, you know, they don't respect her, they don't respect women. This is all terrible. It's really sickening. It's just like, you know, they talk about her like she's a stone or a lamp or a shoe, not a sentient human being in her own right. Okay, moving on to Darcy and her chapter. Pages of nothing happen as it's a Friday night and they get dressed up and whatever, no one really cares. They drive to this local town and they go to this restaurant, and in there they find Professor Orion on a date, or at least they assume it's a date because he's with a woman, and what other reason would a man have to be around a woman, right? Darcy gets all jealous for reasons, I don't know, I can't even begin to understand it. On the far side of the bar, Orion was sitting knee to knee with a leggy brunette who looked like beauty on speed. Fair enough. Could be, I shrugged, turning in the opposite direction as I forcibly ignored the strange reaction my body was having to seeing him here. And the raging pit of death in my chest definitely had nothing to do with the Victoria's Secret model sitting opposite him. Why are all the women in these books beautiful as well? Why can't anyone just be normal looking? Then there's this whole thing where they're like, oh my god, we can buy alcohol, but we're only 18, which I read laughing in England. I've said before, but I feel like we have such a different relationship with alcohol over here, and the twins writing this were actually English, so I get why they also allowed their characters to drink at 18, but the shocked reaction of the characters is still very American. It's very odd. I would say we definitely start drinking younger here on the whole, but in a way that tends to lead to a relationship where by the time you're actually 18 and it's legal to drink, you kind of don't go crazy. And I think it's more accepted that you drink when you're younger, which means people don't hide it as much, which means that people don't get into as much trouble. Or at least that was my experience in terms of where I grew up, you know? When you don't have to hide the fact you're drinking, it becomes a lot less taboo and you're a lot more responsible with it. So like I've said before, I was drinking and going to clubs at like 16, and my parents always knew where I was, who I was with, when I was going to be home, and one of them would always wait up for me to make sure I got in safe and I was okay, and it was great. It always meant I was responsible and I was like accountable for someone, so I never went over the top. I never did anything crazy. It was just, yeah, it was good. Anyway, it turns out that, so after finding out that they can drink, they're suddenly like, oh my god, shots, let's all do shots, even though they're in a restaurant. It's like, come on, really? But it also turns out that they're in the restaurant where all the teachers hang out, apparently. And the kids, being kids who aren't kids at all but adults, who just keep acting like kids, are all like, oh my god, let's do more shots with our pizza. So they order pizza and tequila, because who does that? Anyway, then the ASS girl comes over and they're really mean to her and they joke about getting bullied, and it's all just very, very horrible. Then at the bar, Darcy overhears Orion and his date talk about killing them, meaning probably the twins. I mean, it could be someone else, but no, it's not. I'm just going to tell you now. Spoilers and whatever. So Darcy is like, and runs away, and she's all shocked, and she tries to hide in the bathroom, but then Orion forces his way into the bathroom behind her and threatens her and uses magic against her, and then laughs in her face and tells her to go home. Oh, I hate this man. Tori is like, if he wants us to go home, then we definitely won't, because, you know, they're children. And then we get this bit where he's gone now anyway, Sophia said, standing and starting to dance to the background music playing in the bar/restaurant. She started dancing provocatively with her chair and my mouth parted. Who Who writes stuff like this? I mean, who does stuff like this? This is not how humans behave, but mostly who writes it? We then cut to Tori's chapter. Sophia has gone home because she's too drunk. Diego went with her to look after her because he's actually a decent man, which is probably why the twins aren't attracted to him. Falling Star, the anonymous person, texts them again and is basically stalking them, which is kind of creepy. And he's like, let's meet behind the bar. Yeah, it's not suspicious or creepy at all, is it? Just go down a dark alley and meet someone you don't know. It's not going to get you killed. Are we sure we should trust this stalker? I muttered as I narrowed my eyes at a group of sophomores who were laughing loudly in a booth behind us. Darcy cast her eyes around the restaurant too. I don't know, but they seem like one of the very few people who are actually trying to help us in this place, even if they're annoyingly cryptic. I still wouldn't trust anyone in this world, but okay, if you say so. So they decide the best way to deal with this threat is to have more drinks first, because yeah, that's how you save your life from a creepy stalker, right? Tequila. They're up to at least 5 drinks each now, and it's been less than an hour. It's ridiculous. The amount these girls drink and somehow don't get drunk is insane. There's a scene in the second book. You'll know it when we get there. It's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, they're drunk. Seems like a great idea to meet an anonymous stalker in a dark alley behind a bar. Let's do it, why not? So they go into the darkness, and goosebumps rose along my skin. Yep, we were definitely heading into a serial killer's wet dream. Who writes this stuff? And I couldn't help but question our sanity a little as we failed to turn back. This is gross, and you're idiots. Falling Star doesn't show, surprise, surprise, but some creepy shadow thing does, and it rattles and it drains all their power. I don't know if this is meant to be like a secret or something. This could be a spoiler, but I'm going to tell you now because why not? It's a nymph. They're attacked by a nymph. The figure stood again, shadows seeming to cling to them as if they were drawn by a magnet. It concealed everything about them apart from the certainty in my gut that there was something horribly wrong with them. I mean, yeah, this is creepy. Just, I would like more of this stuff, please, and less of the bullying and abuse, because this stuff is actually kind of interesting. They do manage to stumble away to freedom, only to bump into Evil Max. A hand landed on my shoulder and I flinched as I looked up to find Max Rigel smiling at us. He was dressed in the kind of flashy shirt which probably cost more than a week's rent in our old apartment, and his mohawk was slicked back stylishly. Sorry, but let's think about how much your rent actually cost, because remember, it was ridiculously cheap. I did the maths. It works out that their apartment rent is like $75 a week, which is like, what, 60 quid? That means this shirt costs like 60 quid or more. I know they grew up poor, but that's not mind-blowingly expensive. Like, I mean, I know it's a lot, and many people couldn't afford it, absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that. But they're acting like this is some extravagant purchase, you know? Like, he's a guy who's the son of one of the 4 most powerful people in this entire world. Buying a 60 quid shirt isn't exactly crazy or shocking or over the top. Like, I'm not even close to being rich, and I have a couple of shirts that cost that much. Like, I don't know. Anyway. Anyway, for some stupid reason, they tell him that they were being chased, and he's like,
Oh no! Anyway.
Come have a drink with us, me and the heirs, yeah. Now again, not to victim blame, but let's remember these men have been physically, verbally, and sexually harassing you non-stop for a week. Do you really think it's sensible, while you're drunk, to go and drink more alcohol alone with them? No, it's a stupid idea, stop it. So they turn up anyway, and Darius immediately starts grabbing at them and being a creep. Darius still hadn't released me, and I tried to reclaim my hand by jerking it back. He smirked at my effort, then tugged me forward so hard that I fell into his lap. He wrapped an arm around my waist and shifted me into a more comfortable position with a deep laugh that sent heat flooding my limbs. Drink with us, he insisted, waving at a bartender through the glass window beside us, despite the fact the bar was packed and they were clearly run off their feet. I swear we won't lay a finger on you unless you want us to. Well, I didn't want you to drag me into your lap, but that didn't seem to stop you, I muttered. I was fairly sure that me sitting there weighed against my argument somewhat. These men need basic lessons in consent. I don't care how rich and powerful you are. I don't care if you have magic. Consent still matters. Oh my god. I guess we could stay for one drink, Darcy said hesitantly as Max stroked at her arm, the press of his influence skittering through the air. Oh, so he's coercing her, nice. We were surrounded by smiles that sent my heart fluttering and my gut plummeting in equal measure. I was almost positive that this was a terrible idea, it is. But the tequila in my system and the siren's call and the table filled with gorgeous men were working hard against my better judgment. I wish I could make this little animated character do angry face, because that's how I'm feeling right now. Angy. There is a way somehow, but It's the middle of the night, I'm tired. So the girls do try to leave, and they try to go dancing by themselves, only for the 4 guys to follow them and aggressively stop them talking to any other men. This is possessive and creepy. This is not sexy or cute. They can't even dance in peace by themselves without being bothered. So they go, they're dancing, they're having a little girls' night. You know, as you do, it's really fun. I love that. When a set of hands landed on my hips and my eyes flicked open as I found Darius holding me, his fingertips brushing the line of skin between my waistband and the hem of my shirt. Leave the women alone. My heart stuttered with surprise for a moment and I had to work hard to keep the emotion from my face. Instead, I offered him the faintest half of a smile, which I hope translated into truce as I let him pull me closer. And as much as I would have liked to deny it, being held against Darius Acrux's broad chest really wasn't the worst place a girl could find herself. Really? Because off the top of my head, I can't think of many worse places. Just saying. I turned in his arms and we kept moving to the music and spotted Darcy receiving the same treatment from Seth. He'd wrapped his arms around her from behind and was pushing his face into her hair in his wolfy way, which in that particular moment didn't seem to be a problem for her at all. God's sake. I smirked at her as she gave me a when in Rome kind of look, and I shrugged in acceptance as I moved my body with Darius's. If I closed my eyes, I could even pretend he wasn't such a bumhole, but then I couldn't look at his face or his mouth or the way his muscles were trying really hard to fight against the confines of his shirt. This is ridiculous. Damn, I was definitely going to be in trouble with him if I didn't watch out. Can't believe this. Darius turned to face me again, and I looped my arms around his neck as my chest brushed against his. Stop it, please. Darius kept his gaze locked on me as he consumed his own shot, but I took another step back. I wasn't going to fall into his trap again. This was the guy who'd burned my clothes off and circulated naked pictures of me. He was rude and arrogant and full of himself. There was no way in hell I'd be ending up in his bed tonight. Well, I was at least 67% certain of that. You're literally remembering all the horrible things he's done. The ways he has harassed and assaulted you, and you're still snuggling up to him and being like, oh, he's so pretty, maybe I will sleep with him, oh, I don't know, you just stop it. If that wasn't creepy enough, Creepy McCreeperson, the teacher, Orion, is now also at the bar being creepy, and he's like, Darius, over here, and he gets Darius to go over to him. I feel like 80% of this review is just me going, ew, no, stop, can we not? But that's exactly how I feel, once again. Caleb the vampire then attempts flirting. Why? Caleb shrugged before a playful smile captured his lips. Do you like us fighting over you then? I rolled my eyes back and slid my hand up his chest before linking them behind his neck. Well, if either of you wanted anything other than my blood, then maybe I'd be flattered. But as I'm rather against the whole concept of being a walking juice box, I'll have to go with no. What if I did want something other than your blood, he asked suggestively, his breath dancing across my neck. I lifted my eyes to meet his, my body pressing closer. Without me really intending to do it, I shifted my hands a little higher, my fingertips pushing into the short hair at the nape of his neck, before trailing up to brush against his soft curls. Like what? I asked, adopting an innocent tone which I really doubted he was buying. How much had I had to drink? Why was this starting to feel like it might not be the worst idea I'd ever had? Hadn't he hung me over a ravine and used me like a chew toy since my very first day? Why didn't that seem quite so awful to drunk Tori? I hate myself for having to read this. I'm sorry, I don't care how drunk you are. You don't act like this with a man who has repeatedly assaulted you, harassed you, and tried to kill you, right? Again, not to victim blame, but what is she thinking? Why do the authors want us to think this is cute and romantic and just like, ooh, she's such a quirky girl, flirting with the bad boy? No, she's not flirting with a bad boy. She's flirting with an abuser and saying that all his abuse is okay because he's hot. It just... But no. Anyway, there's a big fuss out on the street and everyone is called back to campus. Geraldine, the crazy fangirl from ASS that they were making fun of before, she's been attacked by the nymph in the same alley that the girls were, and she might die. Oh no. What a shame. They leave the bar and it turns out that Orion saved Geraldine's life, which means he now needs to feed from Darcy immediately. Not really a hero if you're hurting one innocent person to save another, are you? In fact, no, he's not even doing this to save an innocent person. He's already saved the innocent person, now he just wants to refill his power for his own selfish reasons. He's still a pig. You saved her life, the paramedic said to him seriously. It's a good thing you found her before her attacker could finish the job. I was only just powerful enough. I haven't a drop of magic left, Orion muttered, and I realised with a jolt what that would mean. I tried to shove Darcy back into the crowd before he noticed us, but my movement had the opposite effect and drew his attention. My heart leapt as he shot forward with his unnatural speed, and Darcy released a squeal of fright for half a second before his teeth pierced the flesh of her neck. I caught her hand in mine, squeezing it reassuringly as I waited for him to release her, but instead of stopping after a minute or so like vampires usually did, he held her more firmly. A whimper escaped her lips as he continued to suck her power from her veins, and anger built in me as I was forced to watch. "Hey," I snapped, shoving him roughly to try and force him off her. "That's enough." Orion released a growl like a goddamn animal, which was a clear warning to back off, but I sure as poop wouldn't be doing that. Darcy's magic might be pinned down by this parasite, but mine wasn't. And then she hits him with flames. I would like this to happen to more men in this book, please. Just burn them. Burn them all. They're monsters. I don't care. Tori wonders for a while if Darius was the one who attacked Geraldine because he was the one who was missing from the bar when it happened, and he's the only one who doesn't get back on the bus with them. But no, it wasn't. It was nymphs. I can tell you that now. Next chapter, Darcy, she's hungover. Now, I do have to concede one thing. There is one thing in this book that I like that this man does in this scene. Seth shows up at her door, and he does something that I like, that I find quite cool. And I was kind of hating myself a little bit for being like, oh, look at that. That's quite good. But then I realized, no, actually, anyone with magic could do it. Even the girls will be able to do it very, very soon. Like, it's nothing special to them, and it in no way makes up for all the abuse they have been abusing. No, that doesn't make sense. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, listen to this. It's very cool. Darcy's just showered. Seth shows up at her door, and he immediately gives her a perfect hairstyle by drying her hair with his hands. Amazing. He raised a hand, and hot air pushed into my hair, wrapping around it until it was perfectly dry and perfectly styled. Oh, what I would not give to A, either know someone with that skill who I was willing to trust with my hair, or B, what I'd actually like more is have that magic myself to be able to do that. Oh, that would be the best. But Seth's still scummy, and he immediately ruins the cool moment. He stepped forward, pressing his nose into the hair with a sigh. "Cherry, my favourite. Speaking of cherries, has yours been popped yet?" Oh god, I want to burn this book. He threw a suspicious glance into my room, and I jammed my shoulder against the door to keep him out of my private space. Yep, there you go. That's him being disgusting again. Keep your hand dryer hairs. I would rather keep my dignity and self-respect by staying away from men like this forever. He then gets ridiculously jealous and possessive simply because she says the name Orion, and he says, "You just mouth-humped another guy's name," he accused, deadly serious. My lips parted and my heart rushed up and down my spine. Are you kidding me right now? No, are you kidding me right now? This is no joke. You know you can't date teachers, right? Them's the rules, and I'd appreciate if you didn't mouth-hump his name in front of me. Yeah, you know what? He's right. It's no joke. Teachers shouldn't be dating their students at all. But all of this is just so messed up and gross, and I never want to read the word mouth-hump ever again. "Wait up," he called, his joking tone gone. He caught my hand, winding his fingers between mine. "Look, I know I've messed around a lot, and I've been a bum, okay?" I turned to him in utter shock. Was he seriously about to do what I suspected? He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, alright? For your first night, for trying to make you cut your hair off, and then covering you in mud with my mates and posting it online, and then leaving you in the Wailing Woods. I got it." I cut him off. I remember it all pretty clearly. And you know what? I was giving him credit at some point. My original notes here said, "This is surprising. An apology for some of the things he's done. Still not enough. Still doesn't make up for what he did then or any of the rest of it. Apologies are easy. Actually seeing a difference in behaviour, that's the difficult part. On the one hand, it's nice to see someone actually apologise in one of these books. On the other, is it really good enough?" I was so naive. I was naive and stupid, and I wanted to believe the best in people. And I'm an idiot. Then the twins want to go and check on Geraldine, and they go ask creepy water teacher about it, and he is creepy again. I can't believe I have to read this bit out loud. Like, what is my job? Like I say, I do not get paid enough for this, but I do it for you guys, so enjoy. Right, I said, "We're just wondering where Geraldine is. Is she in a hospital?" "No, she's in Uranus," he said around a mouthful of food. "Excuse me?" Tori blurted. "Our friend has been hurt and you think it's the appropriate time to start throwing jokes around?" "No," he said innocently. "She's in Uranus Infirmary, next to Neptune Tower." "Oh." Tori turned red and I burst out laughing as she stalked away. Washer beckoned me closer with a grin, and I felt his siren power seeping over me. I drew nearer as a flood of warmth filled my chest. "Uranus is my favourite building," he whispered. Diego snatched my arm, yanking me away as lust leaked into my body. Why? Then Kylie gets mad because there's a video of the twins dancing with the guys last night, including her boyfriend, which is Seth. I think, yes, Seth. They all have girlfriends who are all exactly the same, with the same personality and the same reactions and the same everything. These authors do not know how to write distinct characters. But also, I did have to ask at this point, like, is this what life is actually like for kids these days? Is like everything photographed and video recorded and posted online immediately? Because back in my day, yeah, I'm that old, we could be idiots with very little evidence of it the next day. If it's like this for kids today now, like, I do feel sorry for them, you know? I think kids should be allowed to just grow up and do silly things and make mistakes and learn from them without it all being recorded for eternity on the internet, you know? Let stupid kids be stupid. Anyway, there's several pages of the girlfriends of these guys being mad at the girls that they cheated with instead of the actual men who did the cheating. So misogynistic. There's even more misogynistic name-calling, calling each other bitches, slapping each other with magic and stuff. It's not great. I'm not a fan. Do not like it. Let's stop with all this, like, woman-on-woman conflict in these books, please. It's not cute. Not a fan. Time skips forward a couple of days, and Darcy has her tutoring session with Orion, in which he essentially calls her a prostitute and a stripper. Lovely. He's mad over her dancing with Seth, apparently. He asks her if she's figured out what order she is yet, and she's like, well, I know I'm not a werewolf, I says with a shrug. Yeah, a great way to figure out if you're a werewolf is dancing with one of them like you were paid for it. Wow. So professional, and not at all misogynistic and rude. What a man. Isn't he just the dreamiest love interest ever, girlies? I dislike him. He picked up a pen and rolled it between his fingers, swiveling side to side in his chair. His eyes never left mine, like he was trying to drill his way into my mind, and picked out all of the information he wanted. And screwing him didn't bring out the wolf in you either. He asked calmly, rationally, like he had the right to ask it, like he wasn't my damn teacher and it wasn't so inappropriate I wanted to scream. My lips pressed so tightly together, I didn't know if they'd even allow me to answer. I didn't, I hissed. And it would be none of your business if I did. Now, this is far too reminiscent for me of something that happened with a certain teacher of mine when I was, like, 16. I won't go into detail, but if you've heard my poem, Mr. Wolf, there's a video of it over on my website. If you want to check it out, you'll know my experience there. Without saying too much, all I have to say about Orion in this scene is abuser and groomer and burn him with fire. Anyway, eventually he's like, no, I don't want you dead, like that's some great romantic gesture. Ew. And then we skip to Tori's chapter again, and there's a dance this weekend. This isn't what university students do. This isn't what 18-year-old adults do. They don't have dancers. Surely not. No, stop it. Treating them like children again. Anyway, actually, here's a fun story for you. As I have been reviewing these books and going slightly crazy, I have been talking pretty much constantly to Alizi and Evangelina Sculp about this, and bless them, they have kept me sane. Love them to bits. But as I was like describing this all, I can't remember what the point was, but like I made a point, and Alizi goes, oh yeah, but that's like pretty typical for YA fiction, isn't it? Like you expect that when they're talking about kids and blah blah. I'm like, no, these people aren't kids. This isn't YA. These are adults, supposedly in adult situations, doing adult things written for adults. And she was like, no, stop, get out. I'm like, yeah. So, you see what I mean? It's just so weird. Anyway, they have a dance this weekend. Everyone is excited. I was a little apprehensive about attending a party with our classmates who range from the weirdly obsessive ASS to the outright hostile mean girls and quite possibly murderous heirs. But I was trying to convince myself that the presence of the teachers and general desire to have fun would mean that Darcy and I could enjoy it too. I really do think these characters were originally meant to be children. I don't know why they're being written like this, and I hate it. She goes to fire training with Darius, who it's awkward with since she danced with him because his girlfriend is understandably really angry. Each time I caught a glimpse of him in the Ignis House common room or the Orb Sins, I'd received glares from Marguerite, which were toxic enough to cause physical harm. That's his girlfriend. But she needn't have bothered. I had zero interest in approaching the possible murderer / constant tormentor / crazy hot bumhole who had appointed himself king of the academy. Please remind me again how we're supposed to like any of these characters. So Darius doesn't show up to the fire lesson, but some other guy called Justin does, and is like, Your Majesty, please allow me to accompany you to the dance. And I just can't with this. Like, he's probably evil too, so don't get your hopes up. No, he's not evil, he's lovely, and that's why he's never mentioned again. I was so surprised for a moment that I could only stare at him. He was good-looking, tall, well put together and clean-shaven. In a nutshell, he looked like the kind of guy your mama would love for you to bring home and your daddy would affectionately call son. Nice, clean-cut, so not my type at all. I'm just teasing you, Justin, I said soothingly, but in all honesty, I don't think would be very well suited for a date. Perhaps you should see if Geraldine is free. If she's recovered by Friday, I know she'd love to come to the dance. I get the feeling the two of you have a lot in common. Okay, we get it, you have unhealthy relationships. Doesn't make you cute and quirky, and it shouldn't be your only character trait. This whole tee-hee, I like the bad boy no matter how many times he tries to gang rape me thing is not cute. Like, I have, oh god, should I say that? No, I'm gonna say this. I have a little bit of a conspiracy theory where, so either the twins that wrote this have so much internalized misogyny and shame and trauma and that's why they're doing it, or they're actually men. I find it very hard to believe that women would write like this about women. I don't believe women can actually think like this and feel like this, surely. Like, there are photos of the twins online. They have a whole online presence, but, and I feel awful saying this, all of their photos are so heavily filtered, it's really hard to tell what they actually look like. So part of me is like, what if they're not even real? What if they're just like men with filters on, or some kind of person with a filter on, or what if they're just like completely AI generated? You know, I find it hard to believe that these two are real people. And that makes me feel horrible saying, but I don't know what's worse. The idea that, like, men are using AI to generate these women to put out harmful misogynistic stuff like this, or the actual real women are this misogynistic. I don't know which is worse. I honestly don't know. Anyway, it's a class. Tori practices her fire magic. There we go. Darius never shows up, so she goes to confront him in his bedroom. We all know what happens in bedrooms. Naps. Naps happen in bedrooms. Aside from the extravagant size of it, the most eye-catching thing about this room was the choice of gaudy decorations. Everything that possibly could be was made of gold, and it didn't look fake either. The bedposts, coffee table, bedside cabinets, wardrobe doors were all heavily gilt, and there was an alarm clock, picture frames, coasters, even a small trash can, all of which seemed to be solid gold. At the foot of his bed, a chest stood with the top open to reveal the fact it was half full of gold coins and gemstones as big as goddamn eggs. More of the same treasure was spread across his bed where he was currently laying, surrounded by the stuff and glaring at me like I'd just grown a second head. He was only wearing a pair of jeans, and for a second I couldn't help but stare at the thick muscles which lined his chest, but my attention was quickly snagged by the treasure again. "What the hell do you want?" Darius snarled, pushing himself up to a sitting position so that he could throw the full weight of his scowl at me. "Do you have a pirate fetish or something?" I blurted, eyeing the coins and gold with confusion. "What?" he asked, his scowl somehow defying the laws of physics, finding a way to deepen. "Well, you're half naked in a bed full of coins, so you're either doing something with them or putting them somewhere inaccessible while fully dressed. Or I missed the memo about your enrollment in Captain Silver's new fleet." "You really don't know anything, do you?" he asked. "This is how my kind regenerate our power. From gold." Oh, I frowned at the coins again as I processed that. "So, are you Order of Pirate then? Do you transform into a one-legged man with an eye patch and a hankering for rum and a pet parrot?" Told you he was a dragon. See, I could have written this book. I know what I'm doing. Then, this bit confuses me from both of them. "The only possible reason I can imagine for you to be stupid enough to come bursting in here would be that you finally come to realize who really deserves to rule Solaria. And that being the case, I imagine you're about to bow down low and praise me and the other heirs as your kings," he said, the casual tone of his voice possibly suggesting he truly thought I might be here for that reason. "Keep dreaming," I muttered. "I'm here because you missed yet another one of our tutoring sessions, as I'm sure you're aware." This confuses me. She has spent literally the entire book up to this point, all 330 pages of it, saying, these guys can have the throne, she doesn't want it, she's not interested. And now he's like, are you finally here to say it? Is that what you want? And she's like, ha, no, of course I'm not saying that, you silly sausage. When that's all she's been saying this whole time, and he's been refusing to listen to her. And but what? I hate this book. And I love this bit though, right? This may be the funniest and worst line in this entire first book. It is surprisingly though topped by a terrible passage from the second one, which involves pee. So don't worry, we'll get there in the next video. Oh my god, this is so bad. She's like, come train me in fire magic, and he goes, I'm an apex predator. My kind aren't built to take orders from anyone. It's written in my DNA to rule over you. I could never bow, no matter how powerful you might have the potential to be. He growled, clearly reading between the lines I'd never meant to draw. Alright, Regina George, calm down.
You're with the apex predator.
I could not stop laughing the first or second or 10th time I read this. Like, I'm an apex predator, please. I just watched the Mean Girls musical like 2 nights ago, so this was all I could think of. Can someone please hit Darius with a bus? What do you think, Kubri Pie? Are you an apex predator? She's just woken up from her sleep, bless her. What order are you? I breathed, wondering why I'd never asked before. Come on, mate, isn't it obvious? I'll show you mine if you'll show me yours, he replied mockingly, and for a moment I could have sworn his eyes changed. They'd look golden, the pupils shifting to reptilian slits before he blinked, and the deep brown colour had returned. Perhaps I'd imagined it, but I didn't think so. He stepped back suddenly and unhooked his belt buckle before unbuttoning his jeans. Rape! This is rape! Stop it! There's gonna be a rape! What are you doing? I gasped. My gaze locked on his movements as he dropped his pants, boxers and all, and I was given an eyeful of every single inch of him. When you stop eye-effing me, I'll show you what you're so desperate to know, he replied mockingly, and I snapped my gaze back up to his face, throwing him a scowl. People don't tend to whip their junk out in the middle of conversation, I quipped, so if you didn't want me catching an eyeful of little Darius, then you shouldn't have brought him into our discussion. I mean, she does have a point there. Don't get your penis out in public, mate. He leaned close to me again, and I had to work hard on maintaining eye contact as his naked, godlike body shifted so close I could hardly breathe. If you come to my room uninvited again, then it had better be because you're ready to bow to us, or to beg me to bend you over that headboard and make you scream my name. He purred, and the total confidence with which he said it made my traitorous libido kick into overdrive. Rape threats like that are not what get girls going. Stop it. And then he jumps out the window naked and suddenly, woo, he's a golden dragon. Oh my god, what a shock. We never saw that coming. Except we did from the first time we saw him, didn't we? Yeah. As if that display wasn't enough to make my heart pound and my desire for him grow tenfold, he released a powerful roar which made the whole glass structure of Ignis house shudder. He followed that up with a blast of dragonfire so potent that it warmed the skin of my cheeks despite the huge distance between us. Please stop talking. Stop it. Oh, come on, we can do this. We're nearly through this book. Darcy's chapter again, and they go to the Siren class with a different teacher than the Siren water teacher. Just because, for reasons, I guess. How many teachers does this school have? Come on. Interesting choice of name here. The Siren Order teacher is called Professor Undine, named after a water nymph. Interesting. Thought nymphs were supposed to be the bad guys in this book series, but okay. Or did the authors just Google water creatures, find a name, and then just stop reading? It doesn't matter anyway, because we never see this teacher ever again. My gaze snagged on Max Rigel on the other side of the circle, and my heart shuddered. His arms were locked around his knees, and his muscles were on show in the tight t-shirt he wore. Everything about him screamed alpha male, and I couldn't help but appreciate his masculine shape for half a second. If I have to read one more alpha male or apex predator trick the red pill nonsense term in these books, I will scream. This is half the reason why I think they're written by men. Anyway, in this class, Darcy lets slip that she finds Professor Orion hot, and everyone just treats it as though it's normal. It's not. And she's like, why am I even turned on by Lord Voldemort's hotter younger cousin? And I'm like, why am I even reading this book? Thing is, though, I do get this reference. I know who that is in Harry Potter, at least Lord Voldemort. I don't know if he has a younger, hotter cousin, but I don't get what this has to do with the vampire teacher. I don't know, maybe you guys who've read Harry Potter can help me out with that. Was Voldemort hot? Was he a vampire? Does he have a vampire cousin? Was he even actually teaching at Hogwarts at any time? I don't know. Was Voldemort a heavy drinker like Orion is? I have so many questions. Anyway, the twins decide that they're not sirens, but Max uses this as an opportunity to manipulate them with his magic, and it's all like, what's your greatest fear? And then Tori tells this story of an abusive ex driving into a lake with her in the car, and that's why she hates water, which doesn't explain why she's fine in water magic class or anything like that, but here we go. And then Darcy explains that she has abandonment issues. Okay, cool. That's it. I guess this is meant to be character development, but it does come up at the end of this book, so whatever, at least as a point, I guess. My original notes here said, we have like 50 or 60 pages of this book left to go, and I'm wondering, when do we enter our third act? When do we hit some kind of conflict or climax? What is all of this building up to? And I kind of still feel that way. It's a very odd book. 3-act structure, who? After class, Seth slips Darcy a note, Darius breaks up with his girlfriend, I struggle to care about any of this, and while all of this drama is going on, Seth drags himself and Darcy into it. Seth barked a laugh and Kylie shot him a death glare. You're no better, I saw that video of you and Darcy fucking Vega at the bar last Friday. I know I wasn't going to swear, but I just had to there. With that stupid voice, why am I still doing it? There's not even any consistency. Seth held his heart, faking a wound. Sorry, babe, did I forget to ask your permission? You know I'm totally polyamorous, right? She huffed at him, her hands balling into fists. No, Seth, you've never told me that. No? He questioned airily, leaning his shoulder against Max's. Well, you can't go poly-shaming me now, can you? She glared at him coldly. You're a liar. Yeah, exactly, this is not how this works. It's still cheating. You're scummy. I hate all of these characters. Actual polyamorous people communicate with each other and have boundaries and respect each other. Can we not be completely disrespectful to them like this, please? The 4 heirs fell deathly silent and my heart seemed to freeze with them. Max stepped forward, cracking his neck. Want to say that again, Peaches? Kylie backed up, a glimmer of fear entering her gaze. He's not polyamorous, Max. He's not polyamorous. What was the voice I was doing for her? He's not polyamorous. He's not polyamorous. He's not polyamorous. You know, it was a stupid voice anyway. He's not polyamorous, Max. He's just cheating on me. What is wrong with me? This book is sending me crazy. My brows raised and my stomach knotted. I had to give it to her. The girl was fighting her corner and she wasn't going to let Seth get away with anything. Yeah, I am actually on her side in this, absolutely. Then, as the men threaten the women, the girlfriends and ex-girlfriends, they all turn on the weaker women in this situation, or the perceived weak women, and attack the twins. This is just pure misogyny, it really is. It was great when they were standing up to the guys, but then they just turn on other women for absolutely no reason. They say things like, get out of Zodiac, Vegas, sluts. Marguerite spat, her eyes spewing acid. It's just unnecessary. Kylie sees that Seth asked Darcy to the dance, and McGee, they're just a bunch of children, stop it. The girls are gonna ambush Tori or something, so she soaks them with water and runs away, only to bump into Vampire Caleb, where he gets creepy creeps, because he is a creepy creep. Before I could demand an answer, he caught my chin between his fingers and pressed his mouth to mine. That's rape. Well, not really rape, but it's sexual harassment. Don't kiss people without consent. You know what I mean. My heart stuttered in surprise as his lips captured mine, his tongue pressing into my mouth and sending a spike of desire flooding through my limbs. Of course, I knew how attractive he was. You couldn't miss the cut of his chiseled features or the way his dirty blonde hair curled in that perfectly imperfect way. I should have been pushing him back. Yeah, he was one of them. But as I raised my hands to his chest with the full intention to shove him off, I found my fingers roaming over the hard planes of his muscles instead. Caleb released a noise of satisfaction deep in the back of his throat as his hands moved my waist, and he walked me backwards until my thighs hit the hard line of a desk. He lifted me easily, nudging my knees apart so that he could move between my legs, and my heart thundered as the evidence of his desire pressed against me through the fabric of our clothes. It's okay, you can say the word erection, it's fine. I slid my hands around his neck, drawing him closer as I devoured the taste of him and explored his hair with my fingertips. Caleb's hand moved to my knee, his thumb skimming... Actually, that's a weird thing, sorry to interrupt. They never actually say the word penis in these books, or any word for penis. They just talk about, like, every inch of him. I could feel him. He pressed against it. They never just say, like, he put his penis in me, you know? Very odd. Very odd. Where were we? Anyway, blah blah blah, he touches her some more. I'm not reading all this nonsense. I didn't know if I hated him or not, but I did know that my blood was heating and my desire was unfurling in me like the wings of a bird. There you go, see, another Phoenix reference. Told you they were a Phoenix. He was still gonna bite me, steal some of my power for himself, but maybe this was the answer to my feelings on that. At least this once, I could take something from this too. Like, how the hell did this even happen? What even is this book? Did the authors really want us to believe that these independent, street smart girls have such little self-esteem? Stop it. I can take your blood and power from you, he agreed darkly as his gaze slipped from my face to roam over my body. But I desire more than that. And I'm a Taurus. When we set our minds on something, it's not easy to turn us from it. I'm sorry, I know this is Zodiac Academy, but I'm a Taurus is just as bad as those I'm an apex predator and I'm an alpha male lines. I cannot be expected to take this seriously. His kisses grew more urgent as his other hand began to unhook my shirt buttons too, and I continued to explore his body with my hands. I could feel an ache building within me, demanding more from him as he continued to drive me towards the edge. His hand shifted and he pushed my underwear aside before driving a finger inside me. I would like to not read this book anymore, please. Let's stop romanticizing abusers. Let's stop making out like abusers are sexy. They're not. You guys suck. The sex scene goes on for far too long. It's not like a full penetrative sex scene. There's no penis in vagina, but he does make her orgasm, and he doesn't get anything from her in return, but he doesn't orgasm either, but he does bite her and drink her blood because he wants, and I quote, a reward for his efforts. That is sickening, and I hate this book. Cut to Darcy's chapter, and it's the day of the dance. Still not words I can believe I'm saying about supposed adults, but here we are. On the way to the dance, she bumps into Seth and is like, what about your girlfriend? And he's like, dumped, remember? I thought you were polyamorous. I stepped back again, his closeness overly familiar as usual. I'm definitely the amorous part. He grinned widely and held his arm out for me to take. I snorted a laugh. No, Seth, I'm going with my sister. Ooh, twincest, he said brightly. Anyway, she ignores him and gets another anonymous message from Falling Star being like, meet me in the library. So they decide to go to the library, and they find out who Falling Star is. Where are they? I whispered, the place seeming to require silence. Here, a deep voice answered, and a man stepped into the aisle in front of us. My heart raced as I stared upon the face of Falling Star. He smoothed down his long grey moustache, taking a step forward out of the thick shadows. Professor Astrum, our tarot teacher, looked like a little pale ghost as he glanced between us. Girls, he said softly, I'm sorry for not revealing myself sooner. He smiled warmly, and my thundering heart began to slow. I was a good friend of your mother's, he said, pausing to let that sink in. Marissa loved you both very dearly. So there you go, that's the thing that happened. That's some plot. Of all the characters we'd met, this one had so little impact that, like, it wasn't a letdown, this reveal. It just wasn't particularly exciting. It was just, okay, that's fine, whatever. We get another little exposition dump, but it's not really enough. I kind of wanted more plot happening here, you know. He says, those times were dark. Your birth father, King Vega, the Savage King, was the cruelest of rulers. Barely a day went by without a public execution in the capital. Marissa was trying to protect you from him, from the way the world was too. What do you mean? I asked, my heart pounding at the idea of being related to someone with such a terrible reputation. You're scared of that, but you'll have sex with random abusers. Like, come on. Nymph attacks rose every year, and King Vega grew panicked, lashing out at his own people in response. He was deeply afraid of them, and in the end that fear was valid. They murdered him, as you know, and the rest of his family. My throat closed up as I thought of the two human twins who'd taken the fate that was meant for us, and that made me feel all kinds of uncomfortable things towards my birth mother. How can we be related to people like that? Good question, if I'm being honest. But okay, yeah, their father was evil. Most men are in this book. No surprise there. Okay, last attempt at filming this video. So basically they find out that their parents' death was part of this bigger conspiracy, but don't get any actual answers, so they just go back to the party like nothing happened. How did we get like 7 pages of Caleb sucking a nipple to orgasm, but 2 pages of this supposedly big plot reveal that makes up the entirety of this book? Come on. This is why I hate romance books. And they're like, we'll talk later, which means they definitely won't talk later because the professor will end up dead by the shadow thing. And that was my guess the first time I was reading this. I was right. In these kinds of books, people with knowledge always end up dead because they need to drag out the plot for 9 books. Tori's chapter, and she has a dance with Caleb, a bunch of nothing that no one cares about happens for pages and pages and pages. Tori keeps getting drunk because of course she does. Caleb is like, it's not too late to sneak out and have some real fun, and I'm wondering what his definition of real fun is, because if it's anything like his past behaviour indicates, it'll involve violence against women. And I don't think anyone should be taking him upon that offer. Again, to Caleb, Tori says, I don't want your damn throne, I mutter, but he couldn't hear me. None of them ever heard me when I said that. Then why didn't you say it to Darius when he was asking you to say it earlier? There is no consistency in these books. Darcy disappears. Seth has also disappeared. I bet they're together. Tori goes to find her. Darius finds Tori instead. He confronts her, and despite being all like, I don't even want a throne, literally a second ago, now she's all like, I'm not going anywhere. You need to get over it. Make your mind up, woman! Come on! And then Darius the dragon assaults her. Because of course he does. I scowled at him as I made a move to turn away from him, but his hand whipped out and he caught my arm, his strong fingers locking around me like a manacle. Let go of me, I demanded, trying to drag my arm out of his grip, but he yanked me close instead of releasing me. No, I don't think I will, he growled. You're gonna learn a little about respect. I won't have you turning your back on me again. I struggled to free myself from him, but he caught my other arm too. Don't fight me, and don't scream, he said, his voice thick with coercion. So, because of the magic, she goes with him, and then we cut to Darcy's chapter because tension, or something like that. I guess we're supposed to care? Honestly, I hope this whole school gets hit by an asteroid, or, destroyed by dragonfire, or everyone is killed by nymphs. Anyway, Darcy is busy thinking to herself, something in Seth's wolf nature coaxed out a willingness in me that I didn't like. When I was with him, I fell into the trap of his touches and stares like I was just another dog in his pack. One he could simply prompt and guide simply by being an alpha. Ew. Then she is cornered by a drunk Orion, because of course he's drunk, he always is. His breath rolled over me. One bourbon? Maybe two? The gleam in his beautifully dark eyes said he was letting loose tonight, although apparently he lets loose every night. But what did letting loose look like for him? It must have been so exhausting being as angry as he was all the time. Okay, that's a funny line, I'll give him that. I wondered for a moment what caused such a deep, unworldly rage in him, but it definitely wasn't the time for those sorts of thoughts. No, they come in book 2. If Orion was in a bad mood, which seemed to be a pretty much permanent fixture, then I needed to get away. Yeah, honestly, that's terrifying. He's a terrifying man. She's like, you shouldn't be biting me. And he's like, no, I shouldn't even be alone with you. And I think we're supposed to think this is romantic, but it's not. It's predatory and horrifying. I needed to work my angle to get out of this. He could bite me at any second, and I was kind of surprised he hadn't got it over with yet. What would happen if I told Principal Nova about this? He gave me a dark stare. Would you? What? She's not going to care. You literally bit a student in front of the entire class earlier in the book, and it was recorded and put on Facebook. Sorry, Facebook. And there were no consequences. Why? Oh, she's not going to care about this, let's be honest. He gave me a dark stare. Would you? His gruff tone sent a shiver through me, and he shifted his hand on me as if he could sense my reaction. Try me, I whispered, quietly knowing I wasn't much of a snitch, but maybe the threat was enough to hold him off. His fingers slid up against my arm and a carnivorous look entered his eyes. I took a shaky breath as his hand slid to my neck. Something about his mouth against my throat right then seemed like a very bad idea. I am pretty sure being bitten at any point without your consent is always a bad idea. But, call me crazy. One that made my heart pump too fast and my thoughts fly away on the wind. Orion leaned in, and the mere flutter of his breath on my flesh felt like the most forbidden of kisses. I want to vomit. I sucked in a heady lungful of air, tilting my chin up, a small but willful part of me suddenly aching for his mouth on me. This is insanity, which is what I've been saying for this whole book. Orion doesn't end up biting her because Seth interrupts, and I think this is meant to be meaningful. I don't know. And then we get an almost sex scene from Seth and Darcy, which I couldn't care less about, especially because it includes lines like these. Dog Boy was a ridiculously good kisser, and I was starting to believe that maybe he really was sorry for the poop he'd done. That maybe he really did like me. Probably shouldn't be kissing his face off right now, though. How are any of us supposed to take this stuff seriously? His hand roamed up to my neck and something cold brushed my skin. I flinched and his free arms suddenly locked around me. Hard. Seth, I yelped, breaking our kiss as his hold became painful. He snatched hold of my bun, and then the world stopped turning as he sliced something sharp through it. No, I gasped in absolute horror, shoving him back, but it was too late. He released me, and I fell from his lap in a heap on the path, grazing my knees. A single lock of blue had come free from the bun he now held in his grip. Fluttering down onto the ground before me, I snatched it up in desperation, my hands trembling and tears welling and welling and welling. My hair. He took my hair. But it wasn't just my hair. It was an age-old wound, and he'd cut it open deeper than before. Don't trust anyone. That's what it stood for, and how effing poetic that he tricked me, made me trust him, and then taken the one thing which had been meant to warn me against people like him. Don't you just love it when authors just over-explain their story to you like this? Great. Really adds something to the reading experience. A satisfied smirk pulled at his features. Told you I'd get your hair, he said, his voice flat and cold, making my heart crawl into a shell to try and hide. and since Max told me the little sob story behind it, I was even more determined to get my hands on it. My lips trembled as tears ran over them, and the taste of salt and betrayal burning onto my tongue. Giggles filled the air, and Kylie burst out of the bushes alongside several more of her gang, her atlas held in her hand. I recorded the whole thing! I don't know what I'm doing for her voice. What is wrong with me? She told Seth triumphantly. Humiliation washed over me, and I opened my palm in a flare of anger, willing magic into it, but Seth rushed forward, closing my fist as he crouched before me. Nothing personal, Vega, he whispered. It's the way of Fae. If you don't want things to get even worse for you, then take your sister and get out of our academy. He winked, shot to his feet, and slung his arm around Kylie, striding away with their laughter, while their laughter called back to me. So, obviously, turns out the whole thing was a long con throughout this entire book to get her hair, because he is truly a horrible, conniving, manipulative person, and we don't like him. They're all horrible. I hate this stupid book. I mean, we knew this betrayal was coming because that's the book, but it still made me roll my eyes when it did. Darcy cries. Orion is like, I'll come stand nearby and act like this is comforting, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a scream and she's like, oh my god, he must be Tori. Next chapter. I am so ready for this book to be over. And this video. I'm exhausted. Since Tori is scared of water, Darius takes her to the nearby swimming pool to terrorize her, because that's what abusers do, remember? They find out your weaknesses and then exploit them. She is made to jump off a diving board into water, but she has air and water powers, so surely there's a million things she could do to save herself, but no, apparently not. I don't see what the real threat is here, but apparently there is one. She ends up in the water, panicking, drowning, and somehow manages to take her dress off in the water. I don't know how, it's like a fancy ball gown thing. Don't ask me, this makes no sense. And also I think it's just because the authors wanted her naked for some reason. I don't know why, it's not even important here. So they trap Tori in the water with this like ice lid thing, but she has water and fire powers, so, and I know she's panicking and everything, but surely her survival instincts would kick in and she's this like all-powerful magic person. I don't know, I don't understand. What are the stakes really? Maybe if she'd been like drained of power before this, it would be a bit more tense, but as far as we know, she's at full power, and I don't know. The authors just seem to enjoy writing her suffering, you know? I don't know. While she's struggling in the water, it jumps to Darcy's chapter. Orion jumps in the swimming pool to save Tori and pulls her out. I think this would have been so much more impactful if the girls had used their powers to save themselves in both scenes. Why didn't they? It's crazy to me. They needed to rely on another abusive man to save them from other abusive men. I hate this. I hate this. Say what you want about the authors of these books, but they cannot be called feminists, can they? What the heirs have done here is attempted murder, right? They were all in on it. They all tried to murder at least one of these twins, and Orion decides the punishment for that should be to threaten them with detention. Come on. Every student there, not just the heirs who did it, but all the tens of others watching, are all implicated in the attempted murder of a student and the bullying and harassment and the humiliation of another, not to mention they filmed her having sexual contact without her permission and they later go on to post that online. Like, these are crimes. These are very serious crimes. How are they not in prison? If not in prison, expelled. Why are they only being threatened with detention? Darius's eyes slid from his face to Tori, his jaw ticking before he looked back at the professor. We want them out. We were just trying to get them out. You know the pressure we're under. Max found out their fears and, well, we brought them to life. He shrugged and my chest collapsed in on itself. Could they be any more cruel? We didn't even want their throne and they were still willing to try and break us so we'd leave. Yeah, they're all pieces of crap. This is what I've been saying the whole time. Pathetically though, all Orion does is give them 2 weeks detention and a warning. It is absolutely ridiculous. Like I say, send them to prison, set them on fire, trap them under ice, feed them to a griffin, I don't care, just do something. Darcy thinks to herself, I'd never felt so low, like the wind had ripped holes in the sails of my life and left them in tatters. But I would fix them, and I'd rise again. Just not today. See, they're phoenixes. This is what I've been saying. Rise again. Oh, come on. Look, I'm going to go over it all again, right? They survived a fire as a kid. This rise again line. They have fire and water powers as their strongest ones. In the second book, they get these big flaming wings. It's not really a spoiler, I'm sure you don't really care. Crazy. Yeah, they're absolutely phoenixes. They have. They have to be. But I reckon we're not going to find out until they die or nearly die in a book, and then we probably see them do the whole Firebird thing. At this rate, I imagine we won't find out until book 6 or 7, but who knows. Anyway, the next chapter, and they're all crying, and then the crying is interrupted by screams, and everyone runs outside. Something is on fire. Or someone. Orion puts out the fire. Holy poop, I breathed, and Darcy clapped her hand to her mouth. A body was curled on the ground before us, their flesh burned to a blackened crisp, and their limbs coiled up in a fetal position. You know, I said that Professor Astrum was gonna die. Anyway, they feel this tug of magic towards the burnt body. See, they're phoenixes. And a tarot card flies at them saying death, so it must be the tarot professor that's died, even though they can't really tell because the body's so burnt. And they must be phoenixes. I'm saying, yeah. Simple, I solved it. I know this whole book series, we don't need any more. There you go. End of series, done. On the card, there's a note from the dead professor to the twins that says, I made a mistake and now my time is up. The shadow has discovered me and there is no hope for me to escape their wrath. The answers you seek are hidden between Leo and Libra. Don't trust the flames. Claim your throne. Falling star. And that's it. That is where the book ends. Overall, this book is just a lot of terrible people doing really terrible things. How are there between 9 and 16 books in this series, if we count all the little spin-offs and stuff like that? Admittedly, like I said, some of them are prequels, novellas, blah, blah. And this is the first story from the boy's perspective. Blah, 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 blah. How? How are there so many books? I don't get it. There's not that much to say or do in this world. It's just... Overall, this isn't the worst book I've ever read. It's not well written, but it's honestly not terrible either. It's no House of Night, I'll say that. The whole world and politics stuff, it's predictable, but I will admit it's fun. All that lets it down are the terrible, 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 terrible characters and their terrible, terrible, terrible actions, and the attempts at writing romance, which is just literal abuse. And also the pacing of the books is really, really bad. There was no need for this to be 425 pages long. The second book is like 525 pages. It didn't need to be. Honestly, with the amount of plot we got, this book could have been 30 pages long, and it would have been a lot more enjoyable. Anyway, here we are. So, that's me done. Thank you for watching today. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment, because this video has exhausted me physically and mentally, and I really need the support, please. I've already scripted my review for the second book, so that will be out as soon as it possibly can be. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you liked it. I hope, despite the dark subject matter, it was a little sillier and just, I don't know, less serious than some of the videos I've been making recently. I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, thank you for watching today. Thank you for bearing with me when I've not been able to be on camera for these last, this last hour or whatever it is. Just, you know what it's like sometimes. Yeah. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all your support. I appreciate you guys a hell of a lot, and I will see you all again really, really soon. Bye. I'm gonna see if I can make my person wave. Oh, there she goes. Goodbye. Bye. And round it goes, and round it goes. Oh my god, oh my god. What kind of monster am I? Okay, I'm having too much fun with this. Bye.